of Lincoln City City Council meeting of Monday, August 12th, 2019, a little past 6 p.m. Thank you all for coming tonight. Roll call, please.
Dick Anderson.
Here.
Judy Casper. Deanna Hinton.
Here.
Riley Hoagland. Diane Coos.
Present.
Rick Mark.
Here.
Mitch Parsons.
Here.
Join me in the Pledge to Allegiance.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let me know if you do. Yeah. Next on our agenda is a consent agenda. We have one item on the consent agenda, and that's the minutes to the regular meeting of July 8th, 2019.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I have a correction to make to those. It says myself and Counselor Hoagland interviewed Doug Bradstreet, and that was not us for the Public Arts Committee.
I think that was Council. It was me.
Was you?
It was me and perhaps Riley. Yeah. So with that change, could I entertain a motion to approve the minutes as corrected?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
make a motion to approve consent agenda as corrected.
I'll second.
It's a motion with a second to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed with a nay. Hearing none.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'm going to recuse myself because I wasn't there at the
Okay. And one recused. We have the opportunity now for public comment. Anybody who wanted to speak on a non-agenda item. And I always have a nice little verbiage to read. Let me, comments from citizens present. Article 1, Section 8 of the Oregon Constitution provides, no law shall be passed restraining the free expression of opinion or restricting the right to speak, write, or print freely on any subject whatever. But every person shall be responsible for the abuse of this right. Be advised, statements and comments by citizens under comments from citizens present or on public hearings or public comment items are solely the opinions and statements of the speakers and are not statements by the City of Lincoln City and do not represent the opinions of the city, its officers, and employees. With that, we have speakers from Jim and Penelope. You want to come forward?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, my name is Penelope Kaz Merrick.
And I'm Jim Adler.
Jim and I are before you this evening to make one straightforward request. We are here to ask you, on behalf of the City of Lincoln City, to please consider taking the lead in recruiting all of the county's major water suppliers to reconvene the Mid-Coast Water Council and complete the investigation that countywide consortium began in 1991. The study and preliminary investigation from that time examined the potential for future regionalization of water supplies, Lincoln City down to Yachats. Most prominently, the potential for storing water, winter water, behind a dam on Rocky Creek, a solution that was estimated very possibly, both economically and environmentally, not only sufficient, but possibly optimal for the distribution of water throughout the county during the periods when the stream flows are at their summer lowest and the demand for water is at its highest.
The results of that initial investigation were generally acknowledged as a viable possibility for attaining long-term water security for the entire Mid-Coast region, while also providing significant environmental protections. But in 1991, the need for further action on the proposal was not immediate, and in the absence of political will, the Council was able to take a wait-and-see attitude. That waiting period has now passed, and another few years of waiting will allow this potentially invaluable opportunity to slip through our fingers and probably disappear forever. That would be tragic, not just for us, but for countless generations of people living in this area who will inherit the problems we passed on to them by default.
If Lincoln City is willing to take the lead in reconvening the Water Council, Newport must be persuaded to join with it before committing itself entirely to not only repairing the dams at Big Creek for seismic reasons, but also building 2 new big dams on Big Creek. The lead story in the News-Times of July 5th indicated that Newport is looking at the possibility of using Rocky Creek as its sole source, but stated that the withdrawal of Lincoln City from the Water Council was the reason for its demise. Those who have followed this issue closely and researched it thoroughly know that this is not true. Lincoln City was demonstrably a full participant throughout the entire process of looking into a regional versus a city-by-city solution, and was consistently a vital stakeholder.
There's been a great deal of sticker shock hand-wringing about the potential cost of building a dam on Rocky Creek and fears that it could cost much more than the region could afford. The clearest perspective on this came from one of our supporters, who observed that if we can come up with almost $300 million to straighten out a few curves on Highway 20 to save 15 minutes travel time between Corvallis and Newport, then you know that there is money out there to provide long-term water security for the entire region and to provide safe passage for a number of endangered species. When you look at it this way, it's almost a no-brainer.
Please note, we are acutely aware of the fact that by asking Lincoln City to assume the lead in this process, that although this is straightforward, it is not a simple request. It will require much effort and thoughtful collaboration to reconvene a regional water council and begin the search for enough funding to make a thorough examination of a possible regional solution to a very serious water problem that knows no city limits. Had we been able to come up with an alternative path to making this work, we would have taken it. But it is Lincoln City that is most uniquely qualified to assume the lead, and is in fact the only entity in the region which could pull it off. We also know that the city has a very real stake in this process. The demand to supply more water for an increasing population is a certainty. A sustainable supply of future water for our area during the low flow period is not.
We've sought the advice of many of the decision makers in the county while preparing to make this request, and have received almost total affirmation and support. If you do decide to assume this responsibility, we are ready to assist you in any way you might find helpful. We have developed a more complete PowerPoint presentation about the possibility of regionalization, which we are prepared to introduce at various city and tribal council meetings throughout the county in order to bring everybody up to speed on the history of this issue. In the meantime, we await your decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming forward.
Thank you.
Scott Torrance.
My name's Scott Torrance. I own Bear Valley Nursery. About 2 months ago, I observed a service master, which is the yellow rigs that we see going through town that do cleanups and stuff. I observed them dumping into a public facility behind Ace Hardware and took a picture of this. Only because of the fact that they are a commercial business, and to me that was a public facility for people that come through our town with their RVs and stuff. That picture was given to the city manager, and I talked to him about it in person. Last week I got into a very bad altercation behind Ace Hardware. I came out of there buying some stuff for the nursery, and Service Master was there across the street, and I drove over and took a picture because that's what I do, I guess. And they immediately identified me, the drivers did, and run up to my rig and called me a bunch of dirty names, told me to get out of the rig. I obliged them, I got out. Guy put his hands on my chest. I got back in my rig and I called the city manager. Ron, I apologize for all the F-bombs that I left on your answering machine. I don't know if it's because all the politicians I see doing that on the news lately, but I felt really embarrassed after I did that, and I apologize for that. I do not apologize for calling the mayor and telling him that you didn't do your job and ask the mayor to come and talk to me about it. I still haven't talked to the mayor about it. I figure, you know, I probably only spend maybe a few pennies to have that thing dumped, but a commercial company has no business dumping in there unless he's greasing somebody's pockets here. I don't get it. I was told that if I wanted the ordinance changed, I needed to come to the council and have it changed or put my input in. This is what the manager told me after I left the F-bombs on his phone. I told him I don't think I should have to do his job. Obviously there's a problem there, and I can guarantee you that every citizen in this town that spends money on taxes would not appreciate helping a business to dump. That is not right. I was told it's probably, I asked why Drayton and T&L and K&K can't dump their stuff in there like they do. And I was told something about gray water. It doesn't matter if the water's gray, black, pink, brown, whatever, it still goes to the treatment plant. And we're still paying to have it taken there, and they're a business. So that's why I'm here to talk about that. I hope that something can happen. The manager told me that he had talked to all you folks and it fell on deaf ears. I'm not paying taxes to have businesses come and dump in public facilities. It's not right. And if anybody here thinks it's right, I would encourage them to come down to my business and explain to me why it's right and why they can continue to do that. If, in fact, Service Master can do that, T&L, K&K, and everybody else should be able to dump their sewer in there. Their businesses also. I stopped and talked to Ray Drayton. He showed me an $8,000 bill from the city that he just paid for dumping at the treatment plant. He showed me another one for the previous month for $7,000. So he's paying to have his sewage and gray water dumped, and I think that they should too. And to move on really quickly, about the business of night work costing a bunch of money, I tried to get from the public accountant here at the city how much our assessed value is. He told me to go to the county. I paid the county $15, and they sent me the information. It's like $1,788,000,000 that we receive taxes on, or is assessed value. I think that, you know, we were talking about expenditures and everything about night work costs a lot of money. And if you do the math on what Lincoln City brings in for taxes, and you were to do a 3-cent tax levy, that would be like $57,000 a year on 3 cents, which would affect a homeowner of a $250,000 home by less than $10. I talked to a buddy of mine that owns 2 motels that are worth about between 10 and 15 million. It would affect him by about $300. He says he's already taxed for road tax, and he doesn't think it's spent right. So long story short, the reason I did that number, and I actually would appreciate if the mayor, when he does follow up with me calling him the other day, he came to my shop, but I wasn't there. I'm rarely there. That's why I left my phone number. If you call me, I'd really like to talk to you more about Service Master and about a tax levy to help all these people through town and things that could be done with a small amount of money. Ron, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Scott.
Have me arrested with all the po-po back there.
Thank you for coming forward. All right. Julie Sexton.
Good evening, Council. My name is Julie Sexton. I am a lake contractor here in Lincoln City, and the reason I'm here tonight was to give some support to the Planning Department, who has put together, I think, a very workable guidelines and standards for the docks that are going to be within the city limits now. I think the Planning Department did a very good job with the DSL regulations, the county regulations, and I just wanted to show some support for that and hope that I will be looking forward to working with the city in the future for docks on Devil's Lake.
Julia, and I apologize, we do have that as a public hearing later in the agenda tonight. I don't know if you're planning to stay around.
Well, I just wanted to give my support really at the beginning of the meeting. I don't think I'll stick around because I've read everything and I totally, it fits with everything else within the guidelines, so.
Well, I understand it won't be part of the record though, but you know,
That's all right.
as they say, we've heard it, so thank
Right.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming up. Is there anyone who didn't have the opportunity to sign up that wanted to come forward? Yes, sir. Mr. Norikis.
Chet Norikis, Lincoln City. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I am grateful to every one of you for the positive, constructive energy you contribute to our city. Thank you all. I want to thank Public Works workers for their quick and effective action in response to the Salacey sewer pipe failure. I feel staff is obligated to say, I don't know, when confronted with a problem where all the facts are yet to be determined. Thank you, Public Works staff, for your frank and honest response.
Thank you, Mr. Norikis. Anyone else that didn't get the opportunity to sign up, want to talk? Hearing none, we'll move on to our other agenda items then. We have presentations. We have a citizens recognition. Chief?
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and welcome to our friends here in the back. Tonight, Lincoln City Police Department would like to take the opportunity to give some recognition to a couple of local citizen heroes in our mind. Just after midnight on July 16th, 2019, our officers were dispatched to a fight in progress on Highway 101 at Dee River. This involved multiple persons with at least one victim down as we were being dispatched. It happened at about that time, one of our local citizens, Austin DePaulis, had been traveling southbound on Highway 101 and observed this fight in progress and had stopped and was in the process of dialing 911 when our first officer, Jim Hoydick, arrived on the scene. As Officer Hoydick pulled his patrol vehicle into the scene, one of the subjects involved in, well, a number of the subjects involved in the fight fled the scene. But one subject, young man, actually approached the patrol car, began pounding on the vehicle, and as Officer Hoydick exited his vehicle, this male managed to land a tremendous blow to Officer Hoydick's face and head. Officer Hoydick then deployed his baton and landing several strikes that did not appear to be having any effect on the attacker. When Mr. DePaulis observed the attacker continue to advance and wrestle with Officer Hoydick, instead of standing and watching or videoing it, he ran to the aid of the officer. He jumped on the back of the attacker and put a neck hold on him. It was about that same time Officer Casey Clontz arrived on scene and joined the fight. It took all three of these men to get this individual to the ground, but even then they couldn't control him enough to get him into custody. So about that time, Officer Clontz attempted to deploy a taser, but the unit failed to discharge. At that time, Officer Daniker and another local citizen, Zachary Bickerdike, arrived on scene, and Mr. Bickerdike joined the fight as well and took control of the individual's feet. This fourth and fifth person were finally able to get this person into custody. Even with that, Officer Hoydick sustained some injuries that required him to take a trip to the hospital, and he ended up off duty for the following week. But it is obvious that had not these two individuals joined this fight, that our officers may have struggled a lot harder and could have been more seriously injured. So at this time, I'd like to invite Zach Bickerdike and Austin DePaulis up to the front, if you don't mind. You want to turn around and just face these individuals, but we would like to present a special award to these individuals tonight. One for Austin and one for Zachary. The action was on July 16th, 2019, prevent a serious injury to a Lincoln City police officer. On this night, Mr. Powlis and Mr. Bickerdike ran to assist an LCPD officer who had been injured while attempting a custody arrest. Their selfless intervention enabled the officers to gain control of a highly combative subject and prevented further injuries to all involved. Your selflessness and bravery were inspiring, and is presented with the appreciation of the men and women of the Lincoln City Police Department on today's day. In the times that we live in right now, have individuals like this in our community that support our people, don't just stand by and watch when this kind of stuff is happening, is remarkable. And we just want them to know, and you know, that we have great appreciation for not just standing by and watching, but having the bravery to intervene on our behalf. So, Austin, thank you so much. Thank you. I think these people look shit.
I'll shake your hand.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Most of you are a couple of football players.
Thank you, gentlemen, for that, your efforts, and Chief for bringing it forward and making a nice ceremony out of this. All right, we have a couple more presentations. Ed, if you want to come forward and maybe do some service recognition time awards.
Ed Drystad, Explore Lincoln City. We have 2 5-year service awards. One is for Eric Johnson in my department, our PR person, and Also for Liz, who has been with us for 4 years, and more importantly, has put up with me, or for 5 years rather, but has put up with me for 4. So, you know, both of them are to be commended on that point. In fact, if they could both come up now.
Yeah, bring them up.
Does Liz have a last name?
I was going to say,
Ed?
that's Miss Liz.
Ed.
All right, Elizabeth Francis.
Elizabeth.
Okay, let's start with Liz. Liz started working for the city on June 23rd, 2014, and her title was Administrative Technician in the Visitor and Convention Bureau. Prior to that, excuse me, she worked as a legal assistant for nearly 10 years in Beaverton, Oregon, which explains why she's the person in my department who gets along with the city attorney far better than the rest of us. Liz graduated from Pacific University in 1999 with a Bachelor of Art. She has a great background in customer service, event planning, and marketing, as well as supervisory experience. Since joining Explore Lincoln City, Liz has been instrumental in transforming our department processes to be much more efficient. Liz is our numbers person. You know, anytime we do a presentation and you see all the fancy pie charts and graphs, and I'm here talking about how things are trending, that's all Liz's work. She's the person who puts that all together. And the numbers that she crunches for us and the graphs that she presents and the trends that she discovers are the things that guide us in what we do. You know, I can't say enough on how important Liz's work is. We talk a lot about metrics and making data-driven decisions. All that data comes through Liz. And her duties encompass data analytics, managing the operation of the float ferry program. This is the equivalent of running the CIA. I've never seen anything like the float ferry program my entire career until I came here, but we literally have an army of secret agents that no one is allowed to know their name or what they do or whatever, and Liz is the person in charge of that program and does a phenomenal job with it. And she also does all the special event permits. And I think you've seen on occasion how sometimes there's some competing interests, and sometimes it's a challenging process, and sometimes things don't go the way they need to go. It can be a bit stressful. It can be a bit crazy. Liz is a rock. She administers the event permit process with a steady hand. She's fair but firm, and you better stick to the rules if you're dealing with Liz. She does a phenomenal job with that. When it comes to budget time, again, Liz is our numbers cruncher. She's the one that goes through what we did last year. She's the one that helps us come up with the budget. She's the one that forces some of us who would spend more money than they would in the wrong category, if allowed, to stay between the lines. Liz is, she's the person that all of us go to when we want to do this, we want to do that, is there money in the budget? And Liz is not shy to say no when there isn't. So she does a great job of keeping us honest when it comes to spending money. She's shown growth in her job. She's shown initiative and taken on additional responsibilities. When I first came here, Liz primarily issued purchase orders and reconciled the bills when they came in. And anytime I've ever gone to her and say, Liz, we need help with this, will you take on this additional duty, can you do this, can you do that, would you give this a try? I've never heard the word no. And if she doesn't know how to do something, she figures it out. She's grown in her job, she's shown initiative, and with some changes we made upstairs when we had some positions change and we were able to shift a grade level from one place to another, we were able to give Liz a well-deserved promotion to Executive Assistant to Explore Lincoln City's Director on September 3rd, 2018. She's been an immensely valuable member of our team. A lot of the things that we've been able to do are because of the fact that Liz is willing to take things on and make them happen. So I'm very happy to give her her 5-year recognition award, and I'm hoping I'm around to give her her 10th. So, thanks.
Liz, hey,
Yes. Oh, that's where those are.
yes, I've got,
Liz,
don't go very far.
you need to
you know.
come up before the mayor.
Before the mayor.
I would like to point out one thing you did mention a little bit. She is a boxer, Pacific University, but she's part of that growing group of boxers, Pacific University alumni, even in this room tonight. There's at least 3 of us, if not more, and it just demonstrates the kind of quality education that is.
No sparring.
No, thank
All right.
Okay, our next person up is Eric Johnson, and Eric started with us on July 1st, 2014. He was hired to be the public relations coordinator for the Visitor and Conventions Bureau back then. And prior to joining our team, Eric had previously worked for the Cannon Beach Chamber of Commerce as their executive director for about 2 years. Prior to becoming the executive director of the chamber, he worked for the Cannon Beach Police Department as their information aide. Now, Eric graduated from Oregon State University in 2010 with a Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration, and in 2012 he graduated from the same university with a Master's in Business Administration, making him officially smarter than me.
Maybe on paper.
Yeah. Okay, since joining Explore Lincoln City, he's done a lot of stuff. You know, if I look back on my career and at all the things that I learned to do, you know, coming up through the ranks and everything, I would estimate 90% of it to be completely obsolete. You know, it's just, everything's changed. The whole digital revolution happened. Everything upended. Information that used to just come one way through a newspaper or a TV station or a radio all of a sudden is going both ways now. And we need somebody who knows how all that works, and that somebody in our department is Eric. Eric took over our social media channels. So when you see something pop up on Facebook, when there's a really cool picture on Instagram, that's Eric. And he's not only expanded our use of social media, he's not only substantially grown our number of likes and interaction, and he built our Instagram audience from scratch. Eric's the guy that's been making all that happen. And when we get to the point where we're going to be showing you the new marketing plan for Lincoln City, which is underway right now, one of the things you'll see are these graphs of social media interaction that all have this immense upward trend. That's all Eric's doing. I'll admit I don't understand half of it, but all the numbers are positive and he's doing a fabulous job.
It's going good.
It's going good.
Now, one of the things that Eric did not come to us with was a background in public relations. And being Explore Lincoln City, we put him in charge of public relations. We also offered up training. Eric is a member of the Public Relations Society of America, and he has been for last year and a half. Going and taking accreditation courses. And Eric is now officially, it's an APR. Is it just accreditation in public relations? Is that the title?
Yeah.
But anyway, he's the real deal, and he can put it on his business card now. And you're going to start seeing the results of that. You know, Eric and I sat down today and we were going over the marketing plan and how public relations fits into everything. With the money we have enough money for paid advertising, excuse me, to basically whisper to Portland and a little bit in Salem, and the money doesn't go much farther than that. Those two markets are about half of the people that come here. Eric is basically in charge of the other half. So if we need to talk to Salem or Boise, Idaho, or Northern California, or anything outside of where we can afford to advertise, that's Eric's bailiwick. So when you see that we got a feature in Sunset Magazine, that's Eric. If you see us popping up in 1859 that has great regional reach, that's Eric. You know, the couple of times we've gotten lucky and hit a national media outlet where all of a sudden the entire country is hearing about Lincoln City, that's Eric. He has a very, very important and a very vital job to do here. He's spent the time and the effort to get the training and understanding to be able to pull that off. And I think going forward, when you get the report from my department that talks about how we're doing in public relations, you're going to start to see that hit list grow, and it's going to grow out beyond places where we've normally gotten coverage because Eric's put in the time and the effort to make it happen. In his spare time, on his own time, as a volunteer, not as an official representative of Explore Lincoln City, off the clock, he's also the vice president of the Chamber of Commerce Board. So Eric is an extremely valuable member of our department. It's been fun to watch him grow and develop. It's going to be fun to watch him grow and develop more. And again, it's been a great 5 years. I hope there's at least 5 more.
Agreed.
Okay, Mayor?
Suitable for framing, without the framing. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Eric. You've done a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. You do a nice job. Good people. All right. And we're rolling on. A little more economic development. This be the Lincoln City Cultural Center.
Make your computer easier to use.
So much pressure to remember the password. Okay, sorry for the delay.
You're all right.
Hello, everyone.
Good evening.
Hello, hello. Well, thanks a lot for this opportunity to provide the update on the Lincoln City Cultural Center and the financial health of our nonprofit. This is our first council appearance since we signed our new lease for the D-Lake School, and a lot of wonderful things have been happening for us. Of course, I'm here today with some members of our board, and they're here and available to answer questions that you might have. Greg Burton, President, Dennis Cibiello is Vice President, and you know John Collier, who is the Treasurer. Okay, so most of the statistics we're providing today are from fiscal 2018. Our fiscal year ends at the end of December. We've issued our annual report. I provided one of those in your packet today. I also have paper copies if you'd like some. We distributed that to our membership via the mail and also at our annual meeting in May. In summary, here are some of the figures. In fiscal 2018, we presented 327 single or one-time events, mostly in performing and visual arts, but also in other areas of civic and community importance. Those were attended by 42,741 patrons, and I apologize for that typo there, but the figure is 42741. And those are just the people that we count discreetly. Those with ticket sales, registration forms, head counts, and it's a count that has risen every year for the past 9 years. This graph shows a little bit about how the events have grown and the attendance as well. And you can see that we are doing a little bit fewer events than we did 2 years ago, but that our attendance continues to rise. And so that's a really positive thing in my opinion, because that means that we're getting a little bit more attendance at every single event. We have a new statistic here. It's called in-person arts experiences. This is something that we tabulate for Data Arts, which is part of Oregon Arts Commission, and it shows what kind of experiences you're having face-to-face. One of the figures I like best in there is the artist in-person arts experience. 332 different experiences that that our local artists could take advantage of. And of course, we also have the youth arts experiences. We do a lot of programs in-house for the youth of our community. We have Missoula Children's Theater, a two-week theater experience in addition to that, as well as musicals and things that we bring in for our kids, and the kids get bussed in to see them. And that also includes the outreach events that we send our musicians and artists out into the community. And the number there is 5236 in-person experiences for youth. For the past 2 years, we've been involved with a capacity building program with the DeVos Institute at University of Maryland, and it's been challenging us to do things more ambitiously and to market them more effectively. We use some of the grant money that we receive from the Explore Lincoln City to aggressively market some of these more ambitious programs. And in the end of the day, it comes back with more donations and more members of your community. The piece that we're most proud of there is the opera that we premiered last year, Tango the White Gardenia. So we also offer regular ongoing classes. The figure that you see there is separate from our patron count, because those are class visits. You know, the number of times that someone went to yoga. Maybe they went 3 times in 1 week. So those are the number of class visits that we recorded. So the programs that we provide, that's the why. And the financials will show you the how, of course, that we managed to do all those things. These financials were reviewed by Grimstad and Associates and are included in our annual report. So you can see from the grid here that memberships and donations made up about $112,000 of our annual income. But program services were even higher. I like to see that, because that shows me that we have a large number of people, and they are willing to pay for the arts experiences that they enjoy. So that's an important figure to get nice revenue from your program services. And it'll also show you, this table, something that's important, and that's the input from the city, shown as an in-kind donation. That's where the rent donation from the city shows up in our books. Here are our operating expenses, and we basically put them into 3 categories. The general and administrative is the bulk of our expenses, and that's payroll, supplies, equipment, fees, travel, education, staff recruit, that sort of thing. The program expenses are all the things that we spend on for artist fees, performing arts, fees, teachers, art supplies, that sort of thing. Under building are the things that, the money that we spend to keep the building running, like utilities, repairs, and maintenance. So here we have our bottom line, our net operating income, and our depreciation. What's important to know about this figure is that you remember last year when we came to see you, we asked for permission to go forth conceptually with the plaza. And once we got approval for that, we began to raise money and to assemble, you know, our designs and everything. And we really raised a lot of money in last fiscal year that's going to push forward into years to come. And so that net income is spoken for. And then the next slide will show you our balance sheet with our cash and equivalents and prepaid expenses and our capital assets net of appreciation. This is just the way that it looks when we submit our taxes. We are sitting on a lot of cash right now, but that is going to be spent on the cultural plaza as we go forward. And these are our reserves. It's supposed to say reserves and restricted funds. And if you've been following the progress of the Cultural Center, you know that about 8 or 9 years ago, we were here before you, and we were talking about rent abatement. And I promised that if we continue to receive rent abatement, we would save money so that we would have a rainy day fund to help with the sustainability of our organization. And so I'm here to tell you that this worked, and we continue to have these reserves. And we have also been building up that maintenance reserve. That's new. And we have a Chessman Development Fund, which was left to us by P.J. Chessman. We used about $20,000 of that to finish our commercial kitchen and also to finish the elevator project. But we still have $30,000 left, and that's available to us as we go forth. In the past, in the fiscal year 2018, our biggest project was the handicapped lift. And that was paid for through grants, including 2 from the city. It ended up being a $42,000 project, but at the end of the day, it's made a big difference for us. It works, it's quiet, it's fast, and it looks good, and it provides access to arts and culture in the basement level. It actually has 3 levels. It's a 3-stop elevator for just our building, but that means we have a street level entrance as well as an upper level and a lower level. And then we had a variety of small building upgrades. We created some new offices downstairs. We did some new paint and fixtures in the hallway. The one I'm most excited about is in the Elizabethan room. We turned it into a much more functional green room for our musicians and visiting artists. It now has furniture and an adult-sized sink and great storage. And the best thing about it is it has a really cool six-station makeup mirror that we can roll wherever we want, and it has these little stations, and you can sit there, and they all have makeup mirrors, and you know the visiting performers, they just love it. One time I opened it up, I said, "You could use the makeup mirror," and they said, "Oh, do I need makeup?" No, you don't need makeup, but if you did, you could do it. And of course, one of the highlights for the building itself, and I mean, if you believe in the D-Lake School and you really want it to be, sustained as you go forward, one of the best things that happened to it last year was the new lease with the city, because it demarcates who is in charge of what and who is making plans for which systems and who is going to be, which side, the nonprofit or the city, is going to be taking care of these systems as we go forward. And that allows us to really think long-term and really do what's best for the building itself, and we're really thrilled. Okay, so community impact. I've thrown a lot of numbers at you, but I want to talk about a few that are important to me. You may remember a few years ago, the Americans for the Arts did a nationwide survey, and they actually did a localized version of that survey, and it's called Arts and Economic Prosperity. And using these local survey data, they found that the average cultural event attendee in Lincoln County spends $41.67 over and above the cost of admission to the cultural event. If you are from that area, the amount that you spend is $18. If you're from outside of town, the amount you spend is $93. So they took and they moved the data around to figure out what the average was, $41.67. So that means that in 2018, our impact on this community and the economics of our community was $1 million and said $1.78 million. So there are a lot of other parts of that study, and I'd be happy to share them with you, but this is just one data point for you. We also have 8 staff members, and so as we've grown as an organization, we've added, input into the community, and we support 4.5 FTE, and we just continue to grow and provide supplemental income for people, including a lot of small businesses and individual artists and practitioners. This is just a small snapshot. These are some of the people that we wrote checks to last year for selling work, for teaching a class, or anything else that they do for us. And so we provide supplemental income for quite a few people. And then if you think about the ripple effect of all the people who rent from us, for example, all the farmers market vendors and all the caterers who come to the weddings and the wedding cakes and the bouquets and the flowers and all the vendors that we use to do the maintenance, they're all local businesses as well. So that continues to have an effect on the economy. I'm sorry about these slides. When I sent them over, they didn't look like this.
That's my fault. Sorry.
That's okay.
It was converted to a PDF, so that's why.
No worries.
Apologies.
Oh,
okay.
Well, I'll go look over Rick's shoulder. Anyway, I think there's also a real community value in the volunteer program that we have. Last year, we had 125 different volunteers serving 9,417 hours. And some of the biggest culprits are in this room. Our board of directors is really dedicated, and we get almost full-time work out of some of the people who choose to lead the cultural center. And they create a community, and it makes a difference in a lot of people's lives. So next, you'd probably like to hear about the Cultural Center campaign. So when we were here last year, we asked for a contribution from the city, $50,000 for design and $150,000 for construction. And we said that if we did that, it would be seed money that would help us grow this whole capital campaign. And I'm really pleased to tell you that it worked. It gave us all the momentum that we needed when we went to the state and asked them for additional funds. And you've probably heard that we got a big grant from the state. And so this project is really moving forward, with many thanks to Representative David Gomber. So the investments from the city and the investments from the state are also helping us raise our individual contributions. Our goal is still $250,000, and as of when this photo was taken, we were at $165,000, and we anticipate being ready to close that campaign at the end of the year. The design work continues on our plaza. We are working with an engineer and a landscape architect. They're working together to complete the construction drawings, and we expect to see those sometime in the next 2 months. And then we'll be going out for bid, and we really hope to be able to break ground and possibly complete next year. Which brings us to the porte cochere concept. So if you're not an architect and you don't know what this word means, I know I didn't, it's basically a shelter over the top of a walkway or a staircase. And we've often thought as an organization that we might want this. And so we've been looking around and thinking about what the design's going to look like. And we've gone to our architect, Scott Edwards, to try to see if we can get some concepts. And they gave us 4 concepts, and we decided that this is the one that we like the best. Now, this is not something that's in our current plan or our current budget, but we need to know if it's okay to have this porte cochere, if we can have approval from the council to make this addition to the building, so that we know in concept where it's going to be, maybe someday. I don't know if that doesn't sound like definite enough, but if we need to leave room for it in the design, we'd like to know now, and so would our landscape architect. So we're asking today for your approval to put an addition, a porte cochere, on the Cultural Center building, on the D Lake School building. And that's all the presentation I have for you today, and I'm here to answer any questions that you might have. And again, thanks for your time and for your support of what we're trying to do at the Cultural Center.
So questions? Questions of council? Rick? You?
Well, the obvious question is, what does your roof over your steps cost?
The roof over the steps? We have no idea.
So you're asking us just to consider giving you the okay to proceed to look into it?
Correct. According to the lease, it's an addition to the building. And in accordance with the lease, we need approval from the city before we embark on something like this. The design itself is not, this is kind of what we think it might look like, but we would go through the normal design engineering and stakeholder analysis and a lot of things. But we think this is basically the direction we'd like to go into.
I think, if I understand right, again, as Nikki has indicated, it is a requirement of the lease, understanding that we'd be in control of the look, so to speak, or at least have influence. But some of the footings and stuff is what matters, depending on if you do an overhead or something. It has impact on the other things they're doing in the plaza. So that's why. So if I'm not mistaken, the real question is, does anybody have an issue with an addition to the outside of the building, such as, because we did something similar on the front side with the venting, as I recall, and the fan that when doing the commercial kitchen, and we ended up wanting that not that smokestack, the venting, to be what's a nice way to say it? Be a little more pleasing to the eye.
Arch trellis.
Yeah, arch trellis. Thank you.
Yes.
And we had the discussion there because we were concerned about the look of the building, and I think that's the same issue here. So,
Yes, that's exactly right.
Any thoughts, concerns?
It'd be a great addition. However, I have a question. I know later in the agenda, we talk about the historical aspect of it. Would that change any of that? Because I think you're the only building that got the approval. I don't know all the words, but.
Yeah, it's kind of cart and horse. We're lucky to have people from the State Historic Preservation Office here tonight. As we reviewed the lease together and staff looked over what steps were needed for the Cultural Center to obtain approval from the city, we included in that review by SHPO. Again, this is in concept only, and the Cultural Center, if they decide to move forward with this, then we would want to run it by SHPO. I have sent them an email just to inquire about this sort of a thing, and it's my understanding that they don't want things to look like fake historical. So it should be complementary, but it shouldn't look exactly like the original structure. And we've already talked about that, and of course, it's a concept at this point and not design. So if it did go forward, there'd be other opportunities, through community input and the typical things that the Cultural Center does with capital improvements.
Mr. Mayor, SHPO stands for State Historical Preservation Office.
Thank you. So that caveat is in there as a.
That's part of the procedure to get council approval. So if you were to give approval, then that's what staff would do in order to carry that out before providing the Cultural Center with written permission or support.
And I think, Councilor, that would take care of your concern or issue there. Everybody all right? Well, we have two issues on this presentation as well. One, to accept the annual update, need a motion for that, and then a second motion to approve or disallow the port co-chair?
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 I learned a new word today when I read it. I had to look it up.
We all did.
Okay.
Okay.
We all did, yes.
I'd like to make a motion
Please.
to accept the annual update from the Lincoln City Cultural Center.
Second.
Let's give, yes. We have a motion and a second to approve and accept the update for the Cultural Center, annual update. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed with a nay. Hearing none. That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And next motion,
Okay, I'll make a motion to grant permission for the Lincoln City Cultural Center to do future Port Crochet concept. Did I say it right?
sounds good to me.
Could be.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion to approve with a second. Any discussion?
So just to be clear, the once we find out what this costs, it still has to come back to us, or is this something you guys have to?
No, we are
shoulder?
not seeking approval as to cost or funding at all. We're just seeking approval.
It just adds
For
to
the
your
concept.
fundraising needs?
Yes.
Now, don't encourage her.
Yeah,
Okay.
unless, no.
What it is subject to is the regular development process and site
Right.
plan and building permits and things like that. This is just the lease issue.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed with a nay. Hearing none. Thank you.
Thank
You got
you.
them both, batting 100.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you so much.
Nice job. Keep fundraising. All right. We have, staying in the theme of historic resources, survey.
I mean, it's number 6.
Oh, I'm sorry. Don't, yeah,
Not yet.
I jumped. I jumped the,
The budget?
we
Jump
have
the
a,
agenda?
what, we, sorry, ladies. Whoa.
We got tobacco in the middle.
No.
Oh, good.
All right.
All that printing not for naught.
No, can I give it to you on a flash drive?
Thank you.
Aaron, want to send it to you?
Thank you.
No? Would you like it on a flash drive, or do you want us to go without? Is it in the handout?
It's all, is it the handout?
It's a little bit different than the handout.
At home.
Either way, whatever you prefer.
I don't know what, it's more of a security issue of a,
One beautiful, secure, county-issued iron key flash drive.
now hold it, don't start getting us on, do we trust the county, you know? You're here and friendly? Let's see what we can do.
Thank you.
So if it goes wrong, it's Lindsay's fault.
Yes, exactly.
That's good, we've escaped blame. Yeah.
Well, we know a county commissioner that, you know, appears weekly, so we'll go after her.
We can introduce ourselves while we're standing here.
Well, sit down and use a mic.
Thank you so much. So thank you so much for having us. I'm Nicole Fields. I'm Deputy Director for Public Health for Lincoln County Health and Human Services.
Oh, sorry, I'm already playing with the micron. My name is Jess Palma. I'm a health education specialist with Lincoln County Public Health.
Just 1 second, we will open up a beautiful PowerPoint. Maybe.
Tobacco retail
Yes.
licensing.
We are here to talk about tobacco retail licensing. And just to be clear, this is not something that we already have in Lincoln County, so this is something we want to look into. We're taking this presentation around to all the different city councils to hear opinions and gather feedback from you. So we're going to start off with a fun little question here of which in Lincoln County does not require a license to do? Own a dog, sell a Christmas tree, or sell tobacco? And it is circled down there. You do not have to have a license to sell tobacco in this county, which we think is pretty amazing.
So,
Sorry, go ahead.
see, I was too eager. So tobacco retail licensing would require businesses to have a license to sell tobacco. This is similar to how any liquor store or retailer selling alcohol, or how our marijuana dispensaries all have to have a license to sell. Oh, let's do it twice. So tobacco retail licensing, you're already asking, why are we even talking about this? And what we know is that tobacco retail licensing, or TRL for short, is really important, and it has a lot of really great effects in the community. We know that it helps reduce youth access to tobacco through a couple different ways. Those 2 bullet points right under that first one are just a few of them. It helps us develop a program that would help us educate and support retailers to make sure that they not only know the tobacco laws, such as the Indoor Clean Air Act, Tobacco 21, different things like that, but also that they have the support and the staff training to really follow those rules, because we do want them to be successful. This also improves our ability to make sure that people are following those laws. So you know that OLCC, the Oregon Liquor Control Commission, does minor decoys and things like that for alcohol retailers and marijuana dispensaries. So it's that same sort of method of having an inventory of who's selling tobacco, but also being able to support the efforts to educate and help enforce tobacco laws. This also reduces chronic disease and tobacco-related deaths, because we know by reducing youth access, that's fewer people that are getting hooked on tobacco when, as they continue to develop and grow, as they carry that addiction, they have a higher likelihood of developing chronic illnesses. And it also allows us to, better spread tobacco cessation information and things like that with retailers. Another thing that a lot of counties have had success with, and what they've heard from retailers themselves, is that this really levels the playing field. So if you have Market A over here who's selling tobacco to anyone, they don't care about checking ID or anything like that, they're making a lot of money off of tobacco products illegally and legally. And then if you have retailer B over here who's just following the rules, they're missing out on all that revenue. So having someone to help educate and enforce these laws levels the playing field for all of our businesses.
Right, so I've already heard the buzzword tonight of data-driven decision-making, so we're going to talk about that a little bit as well. Our Lincoln County adult smoking rate is extremely high. We have about 1 in 3 of our adults in Lincoln County who smoke cigarettes, and we know that it's one of the #1 causes of chronic disease in our county.
And to continue on with data, everyone's favorite, in Lincoln County specifically, we know that just about 1 in 5 of our pregnant women are smoking cigarettes. This is, of course, a concern for the woman herself and anyone that's residing in the home or anything like that, but also to the fetus as it's developing. 1 in 13 of our 11th graders smoke cigarettes. This is concerning, of course, right? We don't want our youth using nicotine or any substance, and we know that the sooner developing brain and body experiments or uses a substance, the more likely they are to develop an addiction and issues with those substances later on. 1 in 11 of our 11th graders are using e-cigarettes, and the thing that troubles me is, well, there's a couple things. 2 of the things that really trouble me is we know that this data is growing. Last year or the year before was the first time that we were able to capture this information, and we've seen e-cigarettes just explode in the market and in youth popularity and things like that. So we know that those rates will be a lot higher. Our youth also don't know that e-cigarettes have nicotine in them. So they're thinking, I'm just having cotton candy or chocolate chip mint. They're thinking that they're just getting flavoring, when in fact they're getting a large dose of nicotine as well.
All right, so to talk a little bit more about the chronic disease burden in Lincoln County, about 1 in 9 people in our county have a serious illness related to tobacco use. This is quite a high number for us, and we actually have 182 tobacco-related deaths in our county every year. So this is our friends, our family, our neighbors, our voters, our taxpayers, all of those. Annual economic cost in our county alone is $35.5 million. That is lost productivity and medical costs. And we broke it down and did the math, and that is $97,260 per day that we're losing due to chronic disease from tobacco use.
So last year and the year before, Lincoln County Public Health did a couple different retail assessments. One retail assessment was looking at tobacco and what's available in Lincoln County, and then the other one was looking at food resources and what's available in Lincoln County. And what really stood out to us was that tobacco is one of the most widely available products in our county. It's easier to get a hold of than fresh fruits and veggies, low-fat proteins and dairy, things like that, which is really concerning considering all of the struggles that our citizens already face. I mentioned earlier tobacco retail licensing would also give us an inventory of stores, because currently we have no way to track who sells tobacco, unlike marijuana and alcohol. And so of the 48, which is actually 50, because when we were at the Depot Bay City Council, they let us know that we had missed 2 retailers, which, you know, demonstrates a great point that how do we know unless we've seen them or someone has told us. But of the 48 known retailers at that time, 95% of convenience stores were carrying and are carrying tobacco products, 78% of grocery stores, and then of course our tobacco specific stores, but tobacco can also be found throughout the county in places we might not think. So a pharmacy where you're going to get your supplements and your prescriptions that are supposed to be helping your health, at campgrounds, and then pet shops as well.
Mini PetSmart. Not to call anyone out, but that is true. That's what we call it too.
So, I'm sorry, are there grocery stores that don't sell cigarettes? I don't think I've ever seen one.
Not off the top of
You're
my
saying that 22% of the
Grocery-
grocery stores do not sell cigarettes?
Grocery Outlet doesn't sell nicotine products.
Grocery outlet doesn't? Huh.
So regarding youth access to tobacco, you know, public health will tell you day in and day out that it's so much easier and it's worth more of our money, your money, to prevent illnesses and to prevent addiction than it is to treat them. Both steps are important, but this is one of the reasons that we focus on youth. In Lincoln County, more than 50% of our 11th graders found it easy to get cigarettes and e-cigarettes. And this is often bought from the stores, you know, themselves, if they're not IDing or they're not asking for ID, and then also bought from peers, which can often be resold to their other peers, right, and distributed in that way. Another data point that we know, Oregon is one of the easiest states for youth to purchase tobacco. So compared to the national average, in Oregon it would take a youth 5 tries to obtain a nicotine product, versus nationally it would take them 10 tries.
All right, so why tobacco retail licensing? So this is pretty much the norm all over the United States. Oregon is one of very few states that does not have this at the state level. 41 states in the United States just require this, hands down. Oregon's one that does not. 4 counties in Oregon already have tobacco retail licensing, which are the blue stars on your map. The red stars are counties that are working on it. So you can see that this is kind of becoming the norm in Oregon as well. It's one of those things where a lot of counties are realizing the value in doing this tobacco retail licensing as a prevention measure, and so it's getting a lot of support throughout the state. It's also shown to be very effective. So this is passed fairly recently in California, and almost half of the counties that were studied saw sales to minors decrease by 30% or more. So that's a pretty huge chunk. To go off the slides a little bit and get on a tangent, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation does an evaluation of the health of every county in the United States on a yearly basis, and they release that data to us. Lincoln County is almost always in the basement of those rankings. We do very poorly. And this is a public health strategy that is shown to work. This is one of the things that we can do tangibly to increase our rankings and get our county to be a little bit healthier.
The benefit also of adopting this policy before the state requires it or anything like that is that Lincoln County can really tailor it to our population and make it work for us, which is really important. So what is included in TRL? Of course, an annual application and fee, just like alcohol and marijuana retailers. This fee would cover prevention efforts and education, as well as enforcement. Education, resources, and trainings, which I've mentioned several times, sorry. And then site visits to each retailer 1 to 2 times a year, depending on how our funding all comes out to be. And then penalties for violations, which could include suspension or a loss of their license or fines. But I do want to say that this policy is really meant to enable retailers to succeed. It's not meant to be punitive or anything like that, so that wouldn't be the first step. The first step would be, you know, enabling and supporting retailers to follow the laws and everything like that.
All right, so our ask tonight, we've been working with Wayne Belmont, who's our county counsel, and I know that he, I believe, has spoken to Ron a little bit about this already. So our ask tonight is to gain your support for looking into tobacco retail licensing. We definitely want to make sure that this is a program that we can enforce on a county level. So much like our environmental health program, where there's restaurants in all the different cities, the enforcement has been signed over to the county. So that's what we're looking to do with this. So there wouldn't be any kind of workforce burden on Lincoln City itself. This would all be a program that we run. So we're asking for support of the program going forward, and then the city managers, city attorneys, and Councilor Belmont would work together to develop the ordinance for tobacco retail license. We're lucky because we have several other counties that have passed it or have it in progress, and so we have a lot of great templates that we can base ours off of. So we definitely don't have to reinforce the wheel. And then we'd be asking Lincoln City to sign over enforcement to the county, and again, that kind of gets you off the hook for having to do any of the enforcement yourself, which is pretty nice, we hope. Again, this is much like our environmental health program in the fact that we're out there trying to educate the retailers. We're not punishing restaurants for selling food. We're not punishing these tobacco retailers for selling tobacco. We're merely trying to educate them and provide some resources that they don't have currently. The fee schedule that we've developed, we've kind of looked at a bunch of different numbers, and we have some samples in your packet for you and some data that we've collected for the other counties, but we're not talking a huge amount of money here. I think we're looking at between $400 and $600 per year per license. So that's pretty, it may seem steep. We took this slide out, and so I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble from my coworker here, but if the retailer was looking to recover that money, the cost of a license, it would be about a 10-cent increase per pack of cigarettes. So it's not like we're asking for, you know, thousands of dollars like a lot of the licenses down in California are. So we can go ahead and take questions now.
Questions? Councilor?
I might have missed it. Would these licenses come before us, or do they go straight to you? Kind of like the liquor license comes to us just for the okay, and then?
We could develop that into the ordinance. It kind of depends on what you feel like is feasible for you. If it's easier for us to just maintain a database, we could go that way. If it's something that you wanted to have final sign-off on, that could be up to you as well. There's also some build-ins that we could look at with the tobacco retail licensing program. So say if you didn't want new retailers to be able to build or to be able to sell tobacco within X amount of feet from a school, we could build that into your license as well.
And one more, might not be the right place for it and kind of extreme. Is there anything stopping us from just banning tobacco sales in our town?
Nope.
Is there any history, or do you have any numbers on the violations that in the county that the police or whomever might stumble across a sting for selling tobacco to a minor?
So right now, and you can jump in here too if you want, right now our minor decoy program for tobacco is run by Oregon State Police. We've heard that a retailer could maybe expect a minor decoy every 2 to 3 years right now just because of capacity issues. And so that's one of the things that we built into the fee structure. If that's something you're interested in, of having more minor decoys, go out to our retailers and make sure that we're not selling to underage folks. That's something we can build in with the licensing program.
So the answer is we don't have any violations on the books that you're aware of?
Sure, there probably are. I just don't have the actual data, but it's fairly infrequently that they actually get a minor decoy program going.
Has there been any kind of touch with retailer associations?
We wanted to bring it to city councils first. That's our next move. We also, do you want to talk about the letter you sent?
I would love to. So in January and February, we did presentations to the Newport Chamber of Commerce and the Lincoln City Chamber of Commerce. And then, gosh, maybe a month or two ago, we also sent out a letter to all of our known tobacco retailers as well as our grocery stores, many of our liquor license holders. just explaining what tobacco retail licensing is, and then some data to back up what we know about Lincoln County.
Any feedback from that?
We had one person come into the office and said, "I'm here for my license and I'm ready to go." And we were like, "This is wonderful. We'll call you."
Okay, well, that's good. I guess, and the other one was an enforcement question, dollars and people, and, quick math, not me. You told me there were 48 places to buy tobacco in the county. Times 400 doesn't sound like a lot of money. So it's not that I'm questioning the county, but so where would the money come from to do all the other things that you've talked about or would like to do?
Yeah. So we actually get a grant from the Oregon Health Authority for tobacco prevention and education programming.
So how much?
We get about $64,000 currently. That's going up a little bit in the next biennium if we can work on tobacco retail licensing.
Okay.
They'll actually give us some more money if this is something we can work on, so that supplements the other end of this program. We're basically looking at the fee structure in comparison to the other counties that are doing this right now, who said this either is or is not enough money for the time that we spend going to these retailers and doing the education piece.
And looking at that list, 125 to 580.
Yeah, it's a
and
big
we know
range.
Multnomah County doesn't count, so.
Well, I kind of want to throw
125
out
to
Benton
200.
County then.
What's that?
I kind of want to throw out Benton County because they have been doing this for 12 years, and they will tell you that they absolutely set that fee too low. They lose so much money doing these inspections because they just did not set that fee high enough.
And
How much is
I guess I'm
Theirs is
questioning.
125.
Yeah, I'm questioning whether 400, 600 is enough too.
Yeah.
Just the administration, we've learned a great deal from.
They've done the math.
Oh, have they? Okay.
It's toward
I'll
the
go
back.
through it. Okay.
There's a tool out of the state of California that has kind of some high level, this is what we think we'd be able to do, and then it spits out a number for you. So we use the tool, put in a couple numbers, ran it with our salary numbers, and that's how we came up with them. But we are flexible to adapting that to your needs too.
And administration of licenses, that's some of the things we've learned in licensing, whether it's taxis or vacation rentals or stuff. It's a
lot.
job.
Yeah, and the nice thing is that we currently run our environmental health inspections off a program called Health Space, and they have an application add-on that we can use for tobacco retail inspections because they have actually used that software throughout some other states. So it's nice that we already have the software licensing and we have some access to it.
Ron, you had a question?
Yeah, I have a question. So the legislature adopted House Bill 2270, which is going to raise the price of the taxes on cigarettes by $2 a pack. That's going before, that's going to be an election in November. They're estimating that that could generate as much as $350 million for the state. Would any of those funds come back to the cities and the counties that can be used? I know they were saying most of it will be used as a Medicaid gap, but they were talking about 10% or so being used in education. Would any of that be able to come back to us? And then the second question is that when I read the bill in preparation for that, it appears as though it doesn't preempt the cities from also putting a tax on the cigarettes packs themselves instead of doing one on a store for licensing it. And I wonder if that is an option that might be available to us.
So as far as the House bill, that will be going to the voters in November. Simple answer is I don't think the state was ready to let us know if any of that money would trickle down to us. We run on a biennium for our tobacco prevention and education programming, and they've just released our funding through 2021. So we don't have any kind of idea if that does go into effect, if we would get any of that money. We hope we would, but it's always a little bit tricky with that prevention money. As far as the individual city taxes, I can look into that for you. I'm not 100% sure. We liked this because it kind of gave continuity to the whole county. So all the cities and the county would have one program straight throughout the county, but I can absolutely look into that for you if that's something you're interested in hearing more about.
Great. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. We'll end up taking it up and send you a note.
Great. And I'll put a plug in too, since you talked about Katie being up here. I'm up here fairly frequently too. If anyone wants to meet and talk about public health in Lincoln
Oh,
City, I'm happy to do so.
Yeah, that's great, because in going through the administration or mayor's office, to have appointments or something would be terrific.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll send you an email.
Great.
Get that set up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we can do historic. Not that we don't think tobacco isn't more important, but Right. Thank you guys for being here and waiting. Sorry we're got so many presentations tonight.
It's easier to read than.
Okay. Counselors, I wanted to introduce Jason Allen. He is the Historic Preservation Specialist for the state, and he has a couple summer interns that have worked on the recognizance level survey for Lincoln City. In January of 2018, Lincoln City became a member of the Oregon Main Street Association, and this is one of the benefits that we receive from that. So I will depart and leave the gentleman to present for you.
Great. Thank
I've
you.
been told they don't have an ask.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. And I'd like to thank Lindsay and Alice Norberts in particular for welcoming us to the community and showing us around and helping us get started and oriented. It was very helpful and a warm welcome in addition. As Lindsay said, my name is Jason Allen. My official title is the Survey and Inventory Program Coordinator for the State Historic Preservation Office. And among our primary missions at the SHPO is to assist communities in the preservation and honoring of their historic buildings and places within their communities. And one of the primary tools that we have for that is the National Main Street Program that's run by the National Park Service but is distributed down to the states to help facilitate at the local level. And the purpose of the National Main Street Program is to attempt to leverage historic preservation as a means to encourage economic revitalization in historic downtowns and communities, which Lincoln City is unique as it has several of those. And so Lincoln City, as Lindsay mentioned, is kind of in the early stages of exploring and joining the National Main Street Program and engagement in that program. And one of these services that our office offers as a part of that kind of welcome package is to actually conduct a historic building survey of the downtown area to provide kind of baseline data and information on what the building stock looks like and to begin to think about what might be possible in terms of leveraging that towards economic revitalization. To help us do that this summer, we have two interns, Eric Newcomb from Colorado State University and Jeremy Ebersole from the University of Oregon. Both are graduate students, Jeremy in the Historic Preservation Program and Eric in the Public History Program, correct? In June, we spent 3 days in town documenting the historic buildings, going up and down the streets, taking pictures, explaining to people who we are and what we're doing.
We got calls.
Did you?
Who are those guys?
Positive ones, I hope.
Who?
We did actually have quite a bit of engagement in the community on the street, and to my knowledge, it was all very positive. I'm happy to report. I also wanted to give a shout out to the Cultural Center. I think the windows look absolutely fantastic. They were in the process of being replaced while we were down here doing our documentation, and we saw the boards over the windows, and we were like, what's happening? But then we saw the windows in place, and they look fantastic. So points for that. So we do have a presentation for you. Eric and Jeremy are going to give you kind of an overview of what we did, what we found, and some sort of preliminary recommendations. And so in the interest of speed, I will turn over the microphones to them.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and City Councilors. Thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Eric Newcomb.
And Jeremy Ebersol.
We're here this evening to explain to you the project background of the reconnaissance level survey that we conducted for the Main Street Network, to explain the data that we found, and then to provide some preliminary recommendations that the city might use for its preservation planning in the future. The report that I passed out to you just a couple minutes ago is the final report that we've delivered to Lindsay, along with this presentation that we hope you'll be able to use as a tool to identify some of the buildings that we've taken a look at, and to work with some of the recommendations that we'll be giving in the future. So a little bit about our project background here. As Jason explained, Lincoln City is in the early stages of being part of the Main Street Network at what we consider to be the Exploring Downtown level. One of the benefits of being a part of that program is a reconnaissance level survey conducted by the State Historic Preservation Office at no cost to the city itself. When we did this survey in June, we were attempting to achieve 3 goals. The first of which is to survey commercial buildings bordering Highway 101 within the pearls of Lincoln City. Because Main Street focuses on economic revitalization, we wanted to focus on buildings that had a commercial purpose and that would be of use, that the data would be of use. We also wanted to assess historic resources and to recommend some next steps, as well as provide the city information for future planning purposes. It's important to remember here that our purpose was not to be an end-all or be-all or the definitive word here. A lot of our interpretation of the data is a preliminary assessment, and we assess these resources based upon the criteria set forth in the National Register of Historic Places, a program that's administered by the National Park Service. We also were keeping an eye out for the potential for a historic district, grant candidate potential, as well as to provide some recommendations for Lincoln City to leverage historic resources. How we surveyed these properties includes taking a look at their purpose in particular. We identified several buildings throughout Lincoln City in regards to the National Register criteria. The factors that the National Register considers are age, the historic features and materials, and alterations and additions. According to the National Register, a building is historic if it's 50 years or older. We bumped that up to 45 years in order to keep the data current for Lincoln City for the next 5 years. And so we identified buildings that were built prior to 1974 or at 1974 and that had a current commercial use along Highway 101. We, of course, wanted to take into consideration historic features and materials that are on the buildings, but also to take a look at alterations and additions to the buildings. And this brings about the question of condition and integrity. A condition of a building is described as its current status, and the integrity of a building is how it best represents its historic nature and its historic features. So, for example, the picture that we have here, if you'll go back to the first one, this is the Rocking Horse at 1542 Northeast Highway 101. We'd say that this building is in great condition. It looks fantastic. It's got all of its things going for it. Integrity-wise, if we take a look at a historic photo here, we can see that some of the windows have been removed and that the doors might have changed, and so we'd say that it might not have great historic integrity. The National Register asks us to consider both of these. Now, it's important to remember that at this preliminary level, we can't really assess significance. There's not enough data for us to really do that. We're looking for buildings that may have historic significance to recommend for further research, but you may know much more about the history and importance of your buildings than we do at this level. So it's very important to keep that in mind. As we actually conducted these surveys, the manner in which we did this included using the Pearl boundaries that the city already has. We started with those Pearl boundaries and created a map for each one of the Pearls in Lincoln City. By using Highway 101 there, we identified buildings that were built prior to 1974 that had a commercial purpose. We then identified and built survey maps that we used to actually conduct the survey in June. And finally, created maps that showed some of the assessments that we made. Each of these maps are located in your final report so that you can see on a building-by-building status what assessments we made and what indications we made.
Each of the buildings that were surveyed were determined to fall into one of 4 categories, which you see on the screen here. Each of these 4 categories are based, again, on the National Register for National Register of Historic Places criteria. Again, as a reminder, these are just preliminary assessments based primarily on our inspection from the public right-of-way. So there are 2 primary ways that buildings can find themselves on the National Register for Historic Places. One of those is by individual listing. Those are buildings that may currently meet the high standards of integrity and significance that are needed for that particular level. Those buildings were deemed eligible significant, such as the Lincoln City Cultural Center and D-Lake Elementary. So if and when you would decide to pursue National Register listing for a building like this, we would recommend the next level survey, which is called an intensive level survey, which is just looking a little more closely into a building like this. The second way that a building can find itself on the National Register is as part of a district nomination. This is a slightly lower threshold for buildings that may not have the same level of integrity and significance on their own, but when combined with others within a defined boundary, can together tell some kind of an important story. Those buildings we called eligible contributing, such as the Nell Scott Mercantile building. Again, to emphasize, we're not recommending necessarily creating districts throughout Lincoln City, just that these buildings are those that might meet the criteria to be considered eligible for such a district. The third category then was not eligible, not contributing, such as the former roller rink, now part of Ace Hardware in Taft. These are buildings that have just undergone too much change to adequately convey their historic appearance and purpose. It does not mean that they never could be eligible or contributing. In fact, a number of grant programs that we'll talk about this evening are designed specifically for buildings like this to help bring them back. And then finally, there are a few buildings that were not eligible out of period. These are buildings that for one reason or other didn't make it into our initial list. We saw in the field and thought they might be historic, and then further research proved them not to be so. So the results of the survey here with us. Again, we did produce maps like this for every one of the pearls. It's just an example here with Taft with some buildings highlighted just to give you a sense of what we're looking at here. But this is over the entirety of Lincoln City within each of the pearls, within the boundaries that we defined that Eric talked about. 1% were determined eligible significant. That was the Lincoln City Cultural Center building. 26% is eligible contributing. 72% not eligible, non-contributing, and then 2% not eligible out of period. This is over a total of 131 properties that were surveyed. As a reminder, the number may look low. 26%, however, is not an unusual number. They are good to remember. And again, this is an assessment, not an assessment, excuse me, of a building that is important versus not important, or even a historic versus not historic, or good versus bad. This is strictly a determination based on the criteria that were laid out previously. A couple of fun points related to the construction date that we can find out. There's some really interesting things that we can pull from the table here. First of all, it's important to remember as we're looking at this table that this does not represent necessarily what was built in Lincoln City during these dates, rather what has survived to this period within the boundaries of our pearl. Secondly, I think this is exciting because it shows that there are really excellent historic buildings in Lincoln City. It can sometimes we can be tempted to think that there are not historic buildings in our communities. Part of what this shows is that we do have a healthy number of historic buildings here in Lincoln City. Third, you'll see the largest number here is in the 1930s during the Depression. This is actually something that is fairly unique within Oregon and even within the country here to Lincoln County. Only really here in Lincoln County and in the Klamath Falls area do we see these kinds of numbers. This is due primarily to a change in the economy in Lincoln City around this time, as we were kind of weaning off of fishing, and tourism was kind of slowly starting to replace fishing as the primary driver in the economy, brought again by the paving and the development of Highway 101 during that time. Lincoln County actually saw a 46% population growth during the 1930s. So this is something that is really unique to Lincoln City and the county here. We do call out, again, you'll see everything, the majority of buildings before the 1970s, again, just as a reminder that that was our cutoff in 1974. And then again, we highlight 1945 as well, just because that is a period that really marks a shift in the way that buildings are built and cities are planned. Prior to that time, you're having buildings that are really oriented toward to pedestrians, smaller or slower moving vehicles. After that time, the post-war boom is going to see a lot more automobile traffic moving much faster, and so buildings are built in a much different way as a result of that. And then finally, the reason that all of this matters is because it does inform the recommendations that we'll talk about briefly shortly here. It can inform how you plan for the pearls. For example, knowing that there are many more pre-war buildings in Taft as compared to somewhere like Wacoma, where there are many more post-war buildings, can inform how you're treating the branding and preservation planning for those particular areas.
As Jeremy stated, we hope that you guys will be able to use this data for preservation planning purposes. One of the things we wanted to provide for the council were some of the recommendations for how we would have used this data as well. And these are very broad strategies that we hope you might take into consideration and that are far more fleshed out with the data that we've used in the final report. There are 5 main ways that we think Lincoln City can use this data for its preservation planning purposes. The first is to engender an ethic of heritage conservation, to utilize the Oregon Main Street network to its fullest extent, apply for Diamonds in the Rough grants, leverage resources for heritage tourism, and embrace placemaking initiatives. Heritage conservation is a phrase that kind of encompasses historic preservation, heritage tourism, and historic resources on a very broad scale. The map we have up here is of the Pearl of Nelscott, but of course we're encouraging this throughout all the pearls in Lincoln City. Heritage conservation and engendering an ethic of heritage conservation means that the people and citizens of Lincoln City would consistently work towards leveraging those historic resources and protecting them for future use and for the benefit of the city itself. The ways that this can be done include conducting intensive level surveys, which look much deeper into the history of buildings, identifying their significance. Buildings like the Old Oregon Tavern in Ocean Lake, or the former City Hall in DeLake, or even Nelscott Mercantile here in Nelscott would be excellent candidates for those intensive level surveys. In addition, there's definitely the possibility to investigate National Register possibilities, both individual listings and historic districts within Lincoln City. Ocean Lake is a great example of the possibility of a downtown historic district, as well as several other individual buildings that might be available if and when you decide to list those on the National Register. In addition, we know that our colleague Curry Gill has come and spoken to the council about becoming a certified local government. Certified local governmentship can allow the city to locally protect its historic resources. It provides access to non-competitive grants that can be used for historic preservation and allows for the city to control and use its historic resources much to its benefit. And finally, heritage conservation also allows for and encourages owners to maintain historic buildings so that the character, identity, and story of Lincoln City is consistently preserved for the future.
We're also encouraging you to continue down the path that you have begun in joining the Main Street Network. You're to be congratulated for joining this program. It really is a fantastic program. It's a proven structure really for developing plans and goals related to long-term economic revitalization that's going to build on the natural strengths of your older buildings. It's a way to help you think about where and how to invest your resources and provides a framework for engaging the community to do that work with you in a way that excites everyone involved. This is a strategy that has proven effective over and over again since the 1970s, and Oregon has one of the strongest networks in the country for these Main Street programs. So this is really a fantastic thing to be a part of. You have access to technical assistance from our office at Oregon Heritage, as well as access to trainings and conferences both from the state and at the national level from the National Main Street Conference. You also have access to grants. One of those grants is the Oregon Main Street Revitalization Grant. You'll see in the report that we do make a few recommendations for buildings to consider looking at for some of these grants. One that was identified, the building here, 304 Southwest Highway 101 in D-Lake. This building shows up in old maps as a post office and city hall for D-Lake. Now, Oregon Main Street Revitalization Grant is a grant that goes up to $200,000 for a wide range of preservation projects, both interior and exterior. We recommend that this building may have the right combination of significance, integrity, redevelopment potential, and amount of work required that could make it a good candidate. That grant could fund all kinds of things, some ideas, market studies to determine community needs, feasibility studies for how to adaptively reuse this building, offices, co-working, housing, various ideas there. Could also pay for physical restoration to make a building like this usable for a tenant. Again, this is the type of building that we think the restoration and use of this building could have a big impact on the community or the character of the community. Another area is with facade design assistance. This could be particularly useful in Lincoln City to show what some of our buildings could look like if restored to their historic look. Lincoln City does have a number of buildings whose historic features have been obscured over the years by large awnings put in the latter part of the 20th century. Facade design assistance can help show what these buildings could look like today if restored to that historic look. And that is sometimes available through the Main Street program. Certified local government grants can also be used to facilitate this kind of process. And then grants from the National Trust for Historic Preservation are also available as well. And just as our little visual here to see what this particular building might look like with the removal of that awning. Another grant is our Diamonds in the Rough grant program. This is grants that are used to restore or reconstruct the facades of buildings that have been heavily altered throughout the years back to their historic appearance. This is a smaller grant up to about $20,000 strictly for facade revitalization. We do make a number of recommendations in the report for key properties to consider for applying for this grant. It is a competitive grant, but there are properties that we believe if restored to historic appearance, could really play a crucial role in revitalizing particular areas and have a domino effect on the buildings around them. One of those is the historic Maynard's Cafe building there in Ocean Lake. You can see the historic appearance there. And we do identify a number of 17 buildings total in the report with 5 key cornerstones, including Old Line Lanes in D Lake and the Family Promise building in Taft, among others. Moving on to some broader recommendations, we did want to talk about heritage tourism a bit. You're doing an excellent job with tourism in the city, and this is just some recommendations based on what the buildings have told us of ways to add heritage tourism into the way that the city talks about itself to a wider audience. Heritage tourism, obviously, just in general, is a way of building excitement around the fun and unique history you have in a way that is engaging to residents and visitors. This, of course, is not something that is advised to do alone. The Historic Museum here in town is a great partner for that, and obviously the county and state has heritage tourism boards there, and obviously those partnerships open up capacity as well as lots of grant opportunities as well. Ways to potentially do that, we suggest posting historic pictures and empty storefronts as a way of activating those spaces, showing what those buildings once looked like. Also interpretive panels, using existing infrastructure, potentially shrink wraps around utility panels, things like that can help just enliven the history of this area and bring it more to the forefront. One of my most exciting things, I think, is these motor courts and other auto tourism related businesses that you have in Lincoln City. You have a wealth of these buildings. Buildings like these old auto courts are really coming back. There's a growing interest in staying in these buildings, redeveloping them as boutique hotels and living situations. There's a link that we've provided in the report that goes into that a little bit. So we have identified a number of historic lodging buildings, a number of buildings that really represent auto age architecture very well here in Lincoln City, and a number of buildings that tell the story of tourism here in the city. And again, grants from the Certified Local Government Program, from Travel Oregon, from the County Cultural Coalition can help you think about ways to exploit that potential even more. And then we have a few fun ideas, such as kind of passport programs that will encourage people to visit particular historic buildings in different pearls to spread that tourism around to each individual pearl.
Finally, Lincoln City is in a very unique position as a unified city with these individual pearls that have its own identity. Placemaking initiatives that create some linkages between those pearls while still highlighting the individual culture and resources of those pearls would create quite a unique effort here in Lincoln City. One of the ways that can be done is to continue some of those design standards that we know that have been worked on here in Lincoln City, especially ones for street furniture and ornamentation, street lights, trash bins, and sidewalk art that connects the pearls together, can create a sense of unified being in Lincoln City while still highlighting the individual culture of each pearl itself. In addition, the utilization of large wall spaces that flank Highway 101 could be used for murals, as well as other forms of street art that could highlight the culture while still creating a sense of place. Large murals nowadays don't have to be stagnant, they can be movable, and can even activate some of the space in between buildings to create a greater sense of identity. In addition, in your packet and final report, we've placed an emphasis on pearl identity by highlighting some of the historic resources that we think tell us a little bit about those pearls. So, for example, you can see we think that Ocean Lake could be branded as the downtown pearl, and Taft as the oceanfront heritage pearl. Each one having its own identity while being unified by Lincoln City itself. We wanted to thank you very much for having us. This survey was an excellent opportunity for us to gain experience, but to also conduct something and find out about a lot of history that we really love. We wanted to thank you guys and hope that you'll use this as a tool, and we'd love to answer any questions that you have.
Is your PowerPoint in this folder? I know you've done like an executive summary.
It's not in the final report itself, but we did provide a PDF to Lindsay so that way it's accessible there as well.
And all this information is in the report as well.
I figured it was, but it sure makes for a nice executive summary.
It's shorter
thank
than the
you
report.
of course. Questions from council? A lot of information.
I don't have a question. I just think it's fabulous. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
It was our pleasure.
My brain's going,
There's a lot of fun. You have there's a lot of great things happening here and a lot of great potential.
Absolutely.
Either of you been to Oregon previously, or this is an internship for both of you?
I am in school at the University of Oregon, so I for about a year or so.
Okay. And
I've
Lincoln
been
City?
I've been to Lincoln City before and been spending summers in Eugene with my sister before coming out here. So.
Good. All right.
Fabulous. Thank you.
As I recall, June was great weather, so you never stood out in the rain, right?
But yeah, otherwise
it wasn't
very
hard
beautiful.
Rain. It was a pleasure nonetheless.
All right. Well, thank you. Sorry we don't have any questions, but going through Lindsay and Allison, who've been champions, so I appreciate the information. It's very helpful.
Our pleasure.
Thank you
for the opportunity.
Thank you so
for the
much.
organization. Thank you. Yeah. Sork. All right. Okay, now let's go to, we're done with presentations. We can move to public hearings. We have 3 public hearings scheduled. The first one would be ZOA 2019-04, Emergency Preparation Facilities. And it is now 7:56 p.m. The public hearing for file ZOA 2019-04 is now open. This public hearing concerns a city-initiated proposal to amend Title 17, zoning in Chapter 17.08, revising the definitional time limitations for emergency shelters and expanding the emergency communication and warning facilities definition. The ordinance also amends Chapter 17.80, which is provisions applying to special uses, Section 17.80.070, which is essential emergency communications and warning facilities, to add other similar emergency preparation facilities such as emergency caches to the scope of the use, and amend zoning districts to reflect the revised definitions and reflect the use as permitted. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on this matter on July 16th and forwarded a recommendation as outlined in the council communication. The City Council's role in this legislative process is to consider the Planning Commission's recommendation, any written or oral testimony, as well as information from staff, and make a final decision as to the ordinance amendments or new ordinances. The City Council may adopt the recommendations or may take other action, including declining to make any ordinance revisions. The Council must take a few moments to cover some preliminary matters and required statements. Does any member of the Council wish to declare a conflict of interest in this matter? Seeing none. All right. The substantive criteria that apply to this hearing include the statewide planning goals, the city's comprehensive plan, the applicable provisions of the city's zoning ordinance. Comments and testimony should be directed to these criteria or to other criteria that the believe apply to the subject of this hearing. Before the staff presents a report, I would like to summarize the adopted public hearing procedures. The staff will present a report and respond to any questions. After that, any person may speak for up to 3 minutes. If council members have questions, your time responding to any questions will not be counted in your time limit. If you wish to speak, please write your name and mailing address clearly in the sign-up list at the entrance. Please speak directly into the microphone and begin by stating your name only. If you also have written testimony to submit into the record, please provide a copy to the recorder. Will the staff please present its report?
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. My name is Anne Marie Skinner. I am the Senior Planner in the Planning and Community Development Department. And as the Mayor has stated, this is file number ZOA 2019-04. The proposed amendment was initiated by the Planning and Community Development Director. DLCD was notified of the request on June 11th, 2019. A notice was published in the newspaper on July 3rd, 2019. As has been stated by the Mayor, the Planning Commission heard testimony and recommended approval of the ordinance. And the ordinance that's presented to you in your packet is what they recommended approval on, with the addition of a definition for emergency cash. Currently, the definition for the essential emergency communications and warning facilities reads as follows: a publicly owned and operated facility used for emergency communications or warning, such as a police, fire, rescue, or ambulance radio transmitting, receiving, or relay station or antenna, a tsunami or fire warning siren, or other similar facility that the City Council has declared by resolution to be essential to the public safety. Presently, the current code allows these essential emergency communications and warning facilities as permitted outright uses in all zones, excepting in the R1 RE zone, wherein conditional use permit approval is required for this use, and in the open space zone where the use is not permitted at all. No specific mention is made of emergency caches. So the purpose of this amendment then is to allow the necessary emergency caches to be located in strategic locations throughout Lincoln City by expanding the definition of essential emergency communication and warning facilities to add other similar emergency preparation facilities, such as emergency caches, to the scope of the use, and to amend the zoning districts to reflect the revised definition and reflect the use as permitted outright in all zoning districts, except, of course, for open space. As previously stated, the Planning Commission recommended approval of this ordinance amendment. No written testimony was received prior to the Planning Commission hearing or in the time between the Planning Commission hearing and the hearing tonight. I would add that the definition that was presented to Planning Commission at their hearing that they recommended to approve is the same definition that is reflected in the ordinance that is presented to you tonight. And if you'd like, I can read that, but if not, I will assume that you have read that. I would add that there is one other minor amendment included in this draft, and that has to do with the definition for emergency shelter. And that simply is making a correction, as is stated in the council communication that was prepared by the city attorney. And basically that correction is to correct the necessary counseling services for 20 or fewer homeless persons to 50 for a period not to exceed 180 days per person. This does not change the use as conditionally allowed, and it does not change that conditional use in any of the 3 zones of RC, GC, or PI. It simply makes that correction to the definition. And with that, I would welcome any questions.
Any questions from councilors? I'm going to make the assumption everybody's read it and saw those, so thanks for offering to read the definitions.
Okay.
We're there. All right. I'll then see if there's no questions of staff, then now's the time for the public comment and testimony. If there's anybody wants to make testimony, and now would be the time. No, Max? No? All right. It doesn't appear like we have any. Is there any, if there's any person in the audience who did not sign up, is there a comment from representative public agencies? If there is no further comment, is there a motion to close the public hearing and the record?
Mr. Mayor, I move to close the public hearing and the record for, I have to get way back here to find ZOA 2019-04.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Now, we would have the opportunity at this time to deliberate, or we could wait and hit all the public hearings and take the ordinances as they are next agenda.
Typically, at this point, you just indicate whether or not we're going to proceed with the readings tonight or set a different time.
So, and the readings being the ordinances?
They're on the agenda.
Yeah. So, is there all right to proceed with ordinances as it? Do we need a motion on that, or
Unanimous consent is fine.
is there everybody deal with the ordinances as it comes up?
Yes.
All right. So with that, then why don't we go to the next public hearing, and that is ZOA 2019-05. That had a recommendation from staff to continue to 8/26/19.
Can I go back just a
Okay.
second? Did you made a motion to close the hearing and close the record, but then we started talking.
Oh, we didn't vote on it?
Voted on
I'm
that.
sorry. I get so excited. So we have a motion to close the record and the hearing on ZOA 2019-04. Roll. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed with a nay? Hearing none. Great.
then by unanimous consent, we're going to proceed with the readings later on the agenda.
Correct. All right, back to ZOA 2019-05, flood damage prevention and new flood maps. We've been asked to continue this to August 26th, our next council meeting, unless there's anyone in the room that came specifically to testify. So we'd certainly open the hearing and hear that. Seeing and hearing none, we'll then move on to ZOA 2019-06. This is dock permitting and standards. It is now 8:08 p.m. The public hearing for file ZOA 2019-06 is now open. This public hearing concerns a city-initiated proposal to amend Title 17, which is zoning, in Chapter 17.44, which is Marine Waterway, Section 17.44.040, which are standards, to make reference standards for docks applicable to all zones where docks are permitted by conditional use. This ordinance establishes docks as conditional uses in the GC, RC, TVC, OSP, RP, RM, RC, and R1 zones and establishes dock standards. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on this matter on July 16th and forwarded a recommendation as outlined in the council communication. The City Council's role in this legislative process is to consider the Planning Commission's recommendation and written or oral testimony, as well as information from staff, and make a final decision as to the ordinance amendments or new ordinances. The City Council may adopt the recommendations or may take other action, including declining to make any ordinance revisions. The Council must take a few moments to cover some preliminary matters and required statements. Does any member of the Council wish to declare a conflict of interest in this matter? Seeing and hearing none. The substantive criteria that apply to this hearing include the statewide planning goals, the city's comprehensive plan, and the applicable provisions of the state zoning ordinance. Comments and testimony should be directed to these criteria or to other criteria that you believe apply to the subject of this hearing. Before the staff presents a report, I would like to summarize the adopted public hearing procedure. The staff will present a report and respond to any questions. After that, any person may speak for up to 3 minutes. If council members have questions, your time responding to any questions will not be counted in your time limit. If you wish to speak, please write your name and mailing address clearly on the sign-up list at the entrance. Please speak directly into the microphone and begin by stating your name only. If you also have written testimony to submit into the record, please provide a copy to the recorder. Will the staff please present its report?
Good evening. My name is Anne Marie Skinner. I'm the Senior Planner for the Planning and Community Development Department, and I am presenting the staff report for ZOA 2019-06. This is a proposed amendment to allow docks in the city. Currently, docks in the city are only allowed in one zone, and that is the Marine Waterway Zone. Most of the properties adjacent to the bodies of water, which specifically would be Devil's Lake, Schooner Creek, and the easternmost portion of Siletz Bay, are not zoned marine waterway. Therefore, they have no mechanism by which they can build a dock adjacent to their property. And this amendment would allow those individuals desirous of building a dock a mechanism for that construction to take place. The standards for docks are outlined in Chapter 17.74. They are limited and do not provide requirements for types of materials, light penetration, or sizing for the docks as recommended by the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. The purpose of this amendment then, in addition to adding docks as a conditional use in the GC, RC, RM, R1, TBC, P, and OS zones, also adds verbatim the standards recommended by the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, specifically called residential dock guidelines. And those guidelines were taken word for word and simply added to Chapter 17.44. Excuse me, I said 7.4 before. This amendment was initiated by the Planning Community Development Director. The notification to Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development took place on June 11th, 2019. The notice was published in the newspaper on July 3rd, 2019. As has been stated, the Planning Commission recommended approval. They did not make any changes to the draft ordinance that was presented to them, which is the same draft ordinance that is presented to you. The department did not receive any written comments, either prior to the Planning Commission or prior to the City Council meeting, and I think that's a good synopsis. I'm ready for any questions.
All right. Any questions from council? Van Murray? We did have, and you may have been here during public comment, though it's Julie Sexton spoke in favor of these standards and stuff. So she knew she wasn't of record, but she made a point of she wanted to make sure we knew.
Wonderful.
Hearing no questions, is there anyone in the audience that would that didn't sign up that wished to make comment? Seeing none, is there any comment from representatives of public agencies? Seeing none. If there are no further comments, is there a motion to close the public hearing and the public record?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I move to close the public hearing and the public record for ZOA 2019-06 dock permitting and standards.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion to close as well as a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed with a nay? Hearing none. And consensus to deal with this next agenda items as we go to ordinances? Is that okay? Everybody all right? Okay. And miraculously, there we are, ordinances.
Your Honor, Counsel, this is first reading of ordinance 2019-24, an ordinance amending the Lincoln City Municipal Code, Title 17, zoning, amending Chapter 1708 definitions to revise the definitional time limitation for emergency shelters and expand the emergency communication and warning facilities definition, amending Chapter 1780 provisions applying to special uses, Section 1780-070, essential emergency communication and warning facilities, to add other similar emergency preparation facilities, such as emergency caches, to the scope of the use, amending the following chapters to reflect revised definition and reflect the use as permitted. Chapter 1716, single-family residential R1 zone, Section 1716-020, permitted uses. Chapter 1717, single-family residential roads and R1 RE zone, Section 1717-020, permitted uses, and Section 1717-040, conditional uses. Chapter 1718, vacation rental VR zone, Section 1718-020, permitted uses. Chapter 1720, multiple family residential RM zone, Section 1720-020, permitted uses. Chapter 1724, professional campus PC zone, Section 1724-020, uses permitted. Chapter 1728 Recreation Commercial RC Zone, Section 1728.020 Uses Permitted. Chapter 1732 General Commercial GC Zone, Section 1732.020 Uses Permitted. Chapter 1734 Nell Scott Plan NP District, Section 1734.050 Permitted Uses. Table 1734.050A Land Uses Authorized at Nell Scott, parentheses, institutional categories. Chapter 1736 Planned Industrial PI Zone, Section 1736.020 Uses Permitted. Chapter 1740 Recreation Residential RR Zone, Section 1740.020 Permitted Uses. Chapter 1742 Parks P Zone, Section 1742.020 Permitted Uses. Chapter 1744 Marine Waterway MW Zone, Section 1744.020 Uses Permitted Outright. Chapter 1745 Taft Village Core TVC Zone, Section 1745.040 Land Use Activities. Table 1745.040 TVC Land Use Activities, Other Uses. Chapter 1750 Ocean Lake Plan OP District, Section 1750.050 Permitted Uses. Ask for approval of first reading, and if it's unanimous, we can proceed to second reading.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Make a motion to approve first reading of ordinance 2019-24.
Second.
We have a motion to approve with a second. Any discussion?
That's got to be the longest title read.
I know.
Congratulations, City Attorney.
You get to do it.
Roll call, please.
Henderson?
Yes.
Hinton?
Yes.
Coos?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And Parsons?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, I'll do the second reading, and I'll say that we don't usually have ordinances that amends almost every zoning district, so this doesn't happen that often. This is second reading of ordinance 2019-24, an ordinance amending the Lincoln City Municipal Code, Title 17, zoning, amending Chapter 1708, definitions to revise the definitional time limitation for emergency shelters and expand the emergency communication and warning facilities definition, amending Chapter 1780, provisions applying to special uses. Section 1780.070, essential emergency communication and warning facilities, to add other similar emergency preparation facilities such as emergency caches to the scope of the use, amending the following chapters to reflect revised definition and reflect the use as permitted. Chapter 1716, single-family residential R1 zone, Section 1716.020, permitted uses. Chapter 1717, single-family residential roads and R1 RE zone, Section 1717.020, permitted uses, and Section 1717.040, conditional uses. Chapter 1718, vacation rental VR zone, Section 1718.020, permitted uses. Chapter 1720, multiple family residential RM zone, Section 1720.020, permitted uses. Chapter 1724, professional campus PC zone, Section 1724.020, permitted uses, uses permitted. Chapter 1728, recreation commercial RC zone, Section 1728.020, uses permitted. Chapter 1732, general commercial GC zone, Section 1732.020, uses permitted. Chapter 1734, Nell Scott Plan NP District, Section 1734.050, permitted uses. Section Table 1734.050A, land uses allowed in Nell Scott, institutional categories. Chapter 1736, Planned Industrial PI Zone, Section 1736.020, uses permitted. Chapter 1740, Recreation Residential RR Zone, Section 1740.020, permitted uses. Chapter 1742, Parks Zone, Parks P Zone, Section 1742.020, permitted uses. Chapter 1744, Marine Waterway MW Zone, Section 1744.020, uses permitted outright. Chapter 1745, Taft Village Core TVC Zone, Section 1745.040, Land Use Activities, Section 1745.040, TVC Land Use Activities. That's Table 1745.040. Other uses. Chapter 1750, Ocean Lake Plan OP District, Section 1750.050, permitted uses. Ask for approval of second reading and adoption of the ordinance.
Mayor?
Yes.
Make a motion to approve second reading and adopt ordinance 2019-24.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Hinton?
Yes.
Coos?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Parsons?
Yes.
And Anderson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. Thank you. And we have ordinance number 2019-23.
Hold on.
Would you like some water?
quick to see how.
Third reading of,
This is the first reading of ordinance 2019-23, an ordinance amending Lincoln City Municipal Code, Title 17 zoning, amending Chapter 1744 Marine Waterway MW Zone, Section 1744040 standards to add dock construction standards, amending the following chapters to reference dock standards under conditional uses. Chapter 1716 Single Family Residential R1 Zone, Section 1716040 conditional uses. Chapter 1720 Multiple Family Residential RM Zone, Section 1720040 conditional uses. Chapter 1728 Recreation Commercial RC Zones, Section 1728040 conditional uses permitted. Chapter 1732 General Commercial GC Zone, Section 1732040 conditional uses permitted. Chapter 1742 Parks P Zone, Section 1742030 conditional uses. Chapter 1743 Open Space OS Zone, Section 1743030 conditional uses. Chapter 1745 Taft Village Core TVC Zone, Section 1745040 land use activities. Table 1745040 other uses. Ask for approval of first reading, and if it's unanimous, we'll move to second reading.
entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we approve first reading and
Ordinance number,
of ordinance number 2019-23.
do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion to approve with a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Coos?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Parsons?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
And Hinton?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Your Honor, Counsel, this is second reading of ordinance 2019-23, an ordinance amending Lincoln City Municipal Code, Title 17, zoning, amending Chapter 1744, Marine Waterway MW Zone, Section 1744040 standards to add dock construction standards, amending the following chapters to reference dock standards under conditional uses. Chapter 1716, Single Family Residential R1 Zone, Section 1716040 conditional uses. Chapter 1720, Multiple Family Residential RM Zone, Section 1720040 conditional uses. Chapter 1728 Recreation Commercial RC Zone, Section 1728040 conditional uses permitted. Chapter 1732 General Commercial GC Zone, Section 1720040 conditional uses permitted. Chapter 1742 Parks P Zone, Sections 1742030 conditional uses. Chapter 1743 Open Space OS Zone, Section 1743030 conditional uses. Chapter 1745 Taft Village Core TVC Zone, Section 1745040 land use activities. Table 1745040 other uses. Ask for approval of second reading and adoption of the ordinance.
Motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we approve second reading of ordinance number 2019-23.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion to approve with a second. Roll call, please.
Mark?
Yes.
Parsons?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Hinton?
Yes.
And Coos?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. Thank you very much. Anne Marie left us, huh? It's before the final. All right. Moving on, we have some volunteers to appoint to committees. Applications for Public Arts Committee. Who's taking that?
I would make a motion to approve Deborah Hobby to the Public Arts Committee, but I need to find the dates.
Term expires July 12th, 2022.
Thank you. For July, her term expiring on July 12th, 2022. Thank you, Mitch.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second to appoint to the Public Arts Committee with the term expiring July 12th, 2022. Can you tell us anything about who you interviewed her, and did anybody else?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Was it you?
Oh.
It was a while ago because she had a very, very short term. Yeah, it's just been a few months that she finished out another term. So
Oh.
this is to bring her onto a full term.
Gotcha.
To continue the work that she's already started.
Great. All right. We have a motion to appoint and with a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed with a nay. Hearing none. Great. Thank you. And we then have, this is the ad hoc Urban Renewal Agency Advisory Committee for potentially new urban renewal districts. And there were some asked for two community members to sit on this committee, and had, 3 applicants? Councilor Parson, is that your area of expertise?
I did interview all 3. I'm just going to start with a motion. We could go from there.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Janet Knapp and Laurel Barton to the Urban Renewal Agency Ad Hoc Committee with a term expiring upon completion of the task.
Second that.
We have a motion to appoint both Janet Knapp and Laura Barton to the 2 vacancies for the ad hoc, Urban Renewal Ad Hoc Committee. Any discussion?
I would just add that I interviewed the 3 candidates as well, and those that are being moved forward had excellent references and very, very well qualified. So
I agree.
I guess, just the question I had, and I don't know the value, so I'm just throwing out, but I find that the other applicant, Stacy Baird, had construction and development expertise, which I was looking for in the other people on the ad hoc. Was during your interviews, did that ever come up as either a need or a concern for the group?
He brought up the issue that he didn't know if there was going to be a conflict with him being a developer and possibly wanting to do work up there with being on the committee. He said he was personally going to talk to a lawyer about that. Don't know if he did or not. Other than that, there was...
Okay. There's a motion on the table to have the 2, Knapp and Barton, on the committee. Any further discussion? Do we need a roll call, or can we just, all those in favor of the motion, say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed with a nay? Hearing none? All right. Thank you. And we're moving on. We have an engineering consultant service list approval of statement. Lila.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Lila Bradley, Lincoln City Public Works Director. And this is an engineering consultant services approval that we're looking for. And I'm going to, I think I'm going to start with the background on this. So under the authority provisions, the Public Works staff solicited qualifications from engineering, surveying, environmental, and geotechnical firms to provide services to Lincoln City for its capital improvement project design and construction services. And so in summary, there are 3 methods to select a consultant: direct appointment for contracts less than $25,000, informal selection procedure for contracts $25,000 to $100,000, and formal selection procedure for contracts above $100,000. And so the Public Works staff designs street improvements and small water and sewer projects in-house using consultant survey services. However, the majority of our larger projects are designed, by outside consultants, and the city can select these consultants project by project based on the estimated fees, or we can select a list of consultants using the formal selection procedure. For efficiency, we chose that formal selection procedure, which we did about five or so years ago. So you have to renew this about every 5 years. So the city's 5-year capital improvement project list was used as a basis for selection. City received statement of qualification from 15 firms, and the city selection committee is recommending 3 firms for each 7 of the categories to be placed on your short list. And as these projects are funded, staff will request proposals from the shortlisted firms and select one to be awarded the contract. And so the following table contains staff's recommended list, and so we selected 10 of those 15 applicants. And so we have water system design, we have I can go through the firms selected: Keller Associates, Pace Engineering, and HBH Consulting Engineers for the water system design. Sanitary pump station design category, we picked Kennedy Jinks, Pace Engineering, and HBH Engineering. Sanitary collection system design, we picked Pace Engineering, Keller Associates, and HBH. And wastewater treatment plant services, we picked Kennedy Jinks, Keller Associates, and HBH. And then for the survey category, we picked Barker Surveying, Amirio Design, and CES Northwest. For environmental services, we picked PBS Engineering and Environmental Inc., HBH, and Geo Engineers. And for the geotechnical services, we picked PBS Engineering and Environmental, and Landslide Technology, and Geo Engineering. And I believe we had a list in the packet, and we left a few of these off, so we gave you a revised list, so that's the one I'm reading off of.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Where'd all those come from? Okay. And so council has the option of approving the engineering consultant selection as listed, not approve the engineering consulting selections as listed, not approve the procedure used, and select consultants on a project-by-project basis. And the financial impacts are consultant fees are included in the budget amount for the projects. So you have some motions, and any questions?
Questions from council for Lila? So, Lila, really, this is just in one swoop. We approve these to do work in these areas, to
Right.
make it quicker to.
Yes,
and
it probably takes a good month off of our timing, and when it's 12 months to do a project, it makes a big difference. And they're all, really well qualified.
And you've had a chance to pre-approve, and that's what
Yes.
this is doing.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I do have a question. So from your selected list, which is longer than the one that we're looking at, and a project comes up that they could do the work of, how do you select between your short list for each category?
We actually ask them to give us a proposal, and then we can accept the one that's best fits, and price.
It's still a bid
and
process.
price-wise.
Okay.
Entertain a motion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I move to approve the engineering consultant selections as listed, or I should say as read by Lila Bradley.
I'll second.
We have a motion to approve with a second. Any further discussion? We need a roll call, or just?
Mark?
Yes.
Parsons?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Hinton?
Yes.
And Coos?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And let's see, we have then construction contract award for Devil's Lake Road, water main.
Yes, and that one will be on West Devils Lake Road from 21st Street to 28th Street, just past the hospital entrance. And So we have an 8-inch water main in the ground there now, and we've been actually replacing the old water line for some time, and there's a section of this that's actually 6-inch too. So this line will be a new C900 12-inch water main. And this project is in the 2004 master plan, and so this is getting close to the last phase of that. We've gone all the way across the highway from Harbor up Northwest 13th and over to West Devils Lake Road. So we've done all of that section before we got to this one. And this one will actually coordinate with the new bridge and getting the water line off that West Devils Lake Road bridge before we finish that one, yeah. And it will also help the hospital with fire protection. So those are all kind of coordinated with the new hospital as well. So the project includes installation of 12-inch water main, a half-street overlay of West Devils Lake Road, and removing the main from the West Devils Lake Bridge. And we had 4 bidders. Lawson Corp. at $644,999, and they were the low bid. We had Tappaney Incorporated at $666,780. We had K&E Excavating at $722,345, and Enterprise Northwest at $729,431. And the lowest responsible bidder was Lawson Corp. in the amount of $644,999, and they are, I believe, out of Staten. We haven't used them before, or they haven't bid on any of our projects in the past that I know of, but they're reputable company. And we budgeted $750,000 in the 1920 budget. So our staff recommendation would be to award the construction contract to Lawson Corp. in the amount of $644,999 with a contingency of $64,500, 10% of the bid amount, for a total of $709,499. And we were well within our budget on that one.
Let's
say. Yeah.
Right. Any questions of council?
I only had one, but I think you answered it. You said in coordination with the hospital, so I was just going to ask the question, will it be done before the new hospital opens?
Yes, it should be. Yep. As soon as you award this, we'll get moving on it.
Is there a time frame of starting on this? What's the projected?
Well, we'd probably be about 30 days out by the time we do the contracts and get them on board. So we have 10 days, and they have 20 days after you award it, and we send out an intent to award.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, that's great.
So, providing no protests, which I highly doubt.
Ed, can you tell us where Lawson is from?
I believe Staten. They're close by.
Oh, I thought I heard you say out of state, but it's
no, sorry, Staten.
Okay, Staten. Oh, that's
Staten.
okay. All right, that's better. Thanks.
I heard state.
Yeah. All right, I'd entertain a motion if we could.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to award construction contract to Lawson Corp. in the amount of $644,999 with a construction contingency of $64,500, which is 10% of the bid, for a total of $709,499.
Is there a second?
I second it.
We have a motion to approve it with a second. Any further discussion?
I could have made it 99 cents and we would have given it to them.
We don't pay up. That's why the contingency's there. Roll call, please. Thank you, Kathy.
Anderson?
Yes.
Hinton?
Yes.
Coos?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And Parsons?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks, Lila. Say, Lila, while you're there, thinking of water lines, Southwest Beach, I happened to be on that over the weekend and saw your cones out, And
Yes.
remembering we've had issues
We've
with that
had
main.
a couple of problems with them, actually 3, and so we're setting that up for replacement. So we're potholing right now and checking all the depths of the lines. So we're doing a design in-house to replace that.
Just out of curiosity and for the public, is that where was that on our priority list, capital improvement list?
It was further down our priority list, and so we've moved it.
That's what I thought. And
Yeah.
so because we've had some issues.
Right. So we'll be replacing that.
Thank you. All right, we have another item of approval of final order for 2461 Southwest Anchor Avenue. Mr. Attorney, we spent time last week.
This is for the special, you had a special meeting a week ago. The 120 days for making a final decision was up on the 6th. There's a rule that gives you 2 weeks to, if you've made a tentative oral decision, you've made a tentative oral decision. So this is the only meeting you have to make the final written decision. So prepared it. I think I captured what was your decision. If you disagree, please tell me. Ask for approval of the final order.
And under separate cover,
It'll be mailed to all the participants, and that'll trigger the 21-day LUBA appeal period.
Great. Entertain a motion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the final order.
On 2461 Southwest Anchor Avenue.
Sir?
Okay.
A second.
We have a motion to approve with a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Hinton,
Yes.
Coos,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Parsons.
Yes.
And Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Before we leave this item, I wonder if, how we do it, but I wonder if council would consider asking Planning Commission to look at these codes, the code specifically around setback, because from that appeal hearing, the discussion around where the bluff was, and not for a decision yet, but to do hearings, I guess, because this one included a altered bluff. And I guess I'm remembering back where we've had a similar issue around the height of buildings, and our code wasn't clear about not being able to reconfigure your lot before you started measuring on the height of the building. And as a result, buildings went up a lot higher than they originally had. And I'm just wondering, as we're getting more construction along the coast, that we shouldn't look at this. Is an altered bluff, okay, fair? And it doesn't affect this one because we've made that decision, but I think just going forward.
I think we need clarity. Is it altered bluff, or is it bluff in an existing location from which you measure the setback? This case would have benefited from clarity in the code on that point. I will tell you that every time there's a water line break or a leak and something falls off of the cliff, we're blamed. Even if it has nothing to do with us and it has to do with this fact that you're in a bluff that you really only have 60 years and then your house is going to go away, we'll still get blamed and we'll get a claim for damages. So I think it's worth clarifying.
Yeah. Is there consensus to, I don't know what the official process is of just asking?
Well, if you have a specific, I think you could say you'd like to initiate an amendment to clarify this section of the code and for staff to bring back options of altered or existing, and you can do that by motion. The planning director can initiate it on her own motion, and so if you just agree that you should planning director should do that, you could do that also.
Mr. Mayor, this is something that we have all talked about and feel that it is needed as a staff.
Okay. And could I then roll on one more on that one?
So is that unanimous consent that we
Yes.
proceed and look at that?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, I was very uncomfortable last week.
Mr. Mayor, could I just, just what's kicking around in my head is that in this case, there was a question, I could picture, it could be any lot. You have what looks like, the question is, where's the bluff's edge? And you could have a lot that is sort of undulating back from the edge, so it's got more height, but that's not the bluff edge, which was the question here. So just because there's a higher spot that you can measure doesn't mean that that's the edge. So I mean, to me, that's just part of the question.
But knowing that it would get all worked out through planning commission would be great. The other, again, from that appeal process, what struck me as I was thinking about it, listening, and we made the right decision, but it does bother me that 60 years, as Counsel has pointed out, and then it theoretically falls on the beach. And I just think that there ought to be a way, the council, we could protect the taxpayers from having to clean up that mess. So somehow the declaration from council, if we or planning when we approve those things, that there could be in some cases a bond or something that would risk get the owner of the property to pay for any cleanup by way of a bond, not just tell me you're going to, but something that's long-term, that's there. And what comes to mind is as we're doing these wave energy things out in the ocean and stuff, we've learned as a state that they don't always clean them up after they're sunk to the bottom. And now the state's even requiring that stuff to have a bond for removal. And that's all I'm kind of thinking of, is something that would say, if and when this ends up on the beach, it's your baby. It's your asset. But I could see once it starts sliding, and insurance isn't going to pay for it.
If you desire, we can just add that to the task that we're looking at.
As long as there's some, at least explore it if there's some way that could be a provision. Okay. With that, city manager report, comments?
I have just one item, Mr. Mayor. So Scott Torrance came in today and talked about the dumping of materials into a septic receiving system. That is all governed by 2 sections of our ordinance, and there are some distinctions that as to what constitutes septic versus non-septic or non-sewage. So what I'd like to do is to include in my report this week some information that Lila and I have put together for you to consider, and then if that is something you want us to pursue, you can bring it up at the next meeting. But there's enough there that it needs more than a 2-minute discussion with you. I need to give you more background information with it. So I'll put that into my report this week, and then you guys can take it from there if you want us to act any further on it.
Take action then. Okay, that would help.
Just to clarify, that was carpet cleaning waste is what that was?
Yes. Yeah. Just real quick, the difference between what gray water is, think of your washing machine. That's gray water. Septic is your toilet.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Do you have anything?
I have one thing. A while back I sent council a memo about the Sky Bridge, proposed Sky Bridge project at the casino. I'd been contacted by legal counsel for the tribe about trying to accommodate that construction, which appears to need to encroach 2 feet into our right-of-way. I informed them that there are 2 options. One, the city manager could issue an annual license and he's been delegated that authority under your ordinances. The second option would be because of the permanence of it, that you consider vacation of a portion of the right-of-way to accommodate that. So basically, we would give up, have a hearing and determine whether or not it was appropriate to give up the public's interest in that 2 feet. So I'm just here to ask you if you have any interest in initiating that. We have initiated street vacations on behalf of private individuals that have requested it. I believe it's like we'd be giving up a $800 application fee if we were to initiate it. Council just simply got back to me and said if vacation would be the way to achieve this, then that'd be fine. Again, if it didn't succeed through the vacation process, you always have the license process to go through.
So the council did come back to you and would like to
I did get a response.
on the vacation?
He basically said he thought there's someone else that was talking to someone else here, but that's why I went out and talked to Lila earlier. We don't know who the facilities manager there has been talking to, but as far as everyone here, we know these are the 2 options. There are no other options, like, we just ignore it. So he said, street vacation sounds good if that's appropriate. So that's where latest communication as of 2 hours ago.
So the question for us then would be, do we want to initiate?
Pass a motion to initiate a vacation of a portion of the right-of-way to accommodate the Sky Bridge project, which I believe is to provide ADA accessibility. I think I sent you the plans that he sent me when I sent you this, but if you want me to, I could make it an agenda item if you'd like to do that, but I know I'd shared this with you earlier.
Just curious about the pros and cons. So
Yeah.
we do that, yeah.
The burden is on
of initiating it ourselves. Yeah.
Just vacation or versus a license or whatever.
Well, a license is delegated to the city manager. He has to make certain findings in order to issue a license, and they have to pay an annual fee for that encroachment. The street vacation would actually, we'd have a hearing to determine if we give up the public's interest in that portion of the right-of-way. And so people that may be affected could come in and object, but if it's approved, then that portion of the right-of-way would go to the adjoining property owner, which would be them, and they wouldn't have an encroachment. My recommendation was to just initiate a vacation. We've done it for private property owners. This is a local government, Indian tribe. I would do it.
I would say initiate.
Yeah.
Looks like 100% go ahead and initiate the vacation ourselves.
So unanimous consent then?
Unanimous consent.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Helps, of course, having 5 of us. We don't have to argue with the other 2. We don't. All right, we got the quorum. Don't walk out, anybody. Anything else, Sheriff Chilly? And Ron, you're okay? Better. Okay, then we have comments from the public. Thank you, staff, for staying. Joe? All right, how about comments from, how about any actions? We had a request, 2 requests. One, the tobacco license thing. And what the request was, Ron, can you help us? What are they really expecting, that we would pursue? Have you continue to
Yes.
work with the county, or?
Well, what they're actually hoping that we would do is to create a licensing feature for any business that is selling tobacco, and to create an ordinance to that effect.
So the city would do something different than the county, or?
No, they're asking that we all adopt
All
the
adopt the
same
same
thing.
one.
Now, we're the
Okay.
first one, so I don't know what the other communities are doing. I do find I do find it worthwhile to look a little bit more into the cigarette tax that the state is putting on, or well, is adopted and is now going before an election, because there was some indication that some of those funds could be coming back to the counties, and that there's some language, and I need to look up a little bit more, where it may be that the cities can, or the county can impose a tax on the cigarette packs themselves rather than doing it through licensing. So there's a little more research that I think is worthwhile, and I made a note to talk to Wayne Belmont about that as well.
Okay. So then kind of wait, your recommendation would wait, you'd come back to us on that topic? And
yeah, we'll bring back some more, and I think we wait until they finish their presentations to the other communities, and I'm meeting tomorrow with the city managers, and so I'll bring that up as part of our monthly luncheon.
All right, that'd be good. Then the other one was the earlier comment to take lead in Rocky Creek or water impoundment, future water, and you know, I interpret that be really looking for grant funds to do more research or review, update the research that has already been done on the Rocky Creek. I happen to have been here when that was there, and we have a great deal of information on the Rocky Creek impounding situation, and then it literally just did get dropped, and I think for political and dollar issues of and no, lack of interest at that time. We're going into a recession and everything else. And I think what I hear from this group is before we drop this all together and give up on all the information that's been collected, suitably smart people need to look through what's been done, update it with our knowledge of 10 plus years, and see if it's still feasible or not. And I know the county has gotten involved a little bit and has some money that they would throw at it as well to help us. But I think there's grant funds, so we'd be the lead asker.
So, so just to be clear, this wouldn't be in competition with what the
Newport?
Yes, thank you. It's
Well,
getting late.
I hear
I
the.
see it separate because
Yeah.
it actually, and I'm sure there's a map somewhere that shows the territory that you're talking about.
Well, and I do too. I see it as separate entities. The Rocky Creek impoundment was designed or talked about by for regional water to connect all the county municipalities with a water source, backup water source. Because as you know, you use it, lose it, or use it or lose it, because we have surface water running by in the winter, and this would be a way to impound it. The Newport dams are really their existing resource, and they've just got dam issues for
double dams.
Yeah, for their, but that doesn't have anything to do with feeding other communities.
I just have another question. So the idea of looking for leadership on this, and if this serves more county than cities, then, I mean, I'm just curious, wouldn't the county want to take the lead, or they are not interested, or what?
Yeah.
Why are they coming to Lincoln City?
Well, the county isn't coming to Lincoln City.
No, I
This
know
group
they
is.
aren't. No, I
But
know, that's what I mean. Why are they coming here rather than the county?
because the county doesn't do, just like you've heard me say, we don't do social services. The county doesn't do water and sewer.
Okay.
And I think knowing that Newport is tied up in their own dam situation right now, this group sees Lincoln City, and since we were a partner before, that's their ask.
So, as I understand, the effort is already underway to revive this, what was it called, the Mid-Coast, the Water Partnership And we had already budgeted money to be part of that, and I mean, I think that's what they're talking about, right? And even Newport had talked about, so it's not like it's something that was dead and we need to start it again. It's already in progress.
The organization, the structure, yeah.
It
I
is a
think-
separate.
I would say what it amounts to, though, is the Mid-Coast Water Planning Partnership has gotten somewhat sidetracked to the Newport Dam. And this group, as I understand it, saying the Rocky Creek stuff is just gotten dropped. Let's not let it drop without knowing that it's not worth reviving. And the likelihood of state or federal paying for, or helping two dams is pretty minimal. So let's do our research and make sure.
So what do we? So I'm actually very concerned about this. Newport has just got approval to move ahead, get some funding for its planning project, and my concern is that if they get too far out in front on this, that it nullifies any effort to make a more regional thing that could help everybody. So I'm interested in a regional approach. I don't know what we do to.
Well, I think the first thing would be, I'm betting, is to find grant money, solicit potential grant money in order to get that certified smart people to look at this stuff.
So who do you see working on this? Lila?
Probably, probably, planning, or, I mean, Lila's got the water main she's working on, right, Lila?
Oh, wait, it's water,
I suspect
right?
it would be a team of us that would need to.
So can we kind of assess that and then come back to it so we know what we're
Yes,
Or just
and assess
move
what.
what
What it would
the
take.
time and what it takes to do what they were
So-
asking of us.
So
I
Ron,
don't
you,
really know what that
so you've heard what we've heard, and it's your staff, and certainly the workload, what,
The first real step that needs to be done is that there's been enough change in our staff that since this happened, that we all need to make sure we're all up to snuff on all of the work that's been done. I've got a fair handle on it, but I certainly don't know all the details. Lila and Stephanie know many more details than we do. Lindsay's coming into this cold, so in a very short while, there's a need for just the staff to get completely up to speed, and then we can come back and give you a little bit more information, but I don't know that I'm prepared tonight to say
Okay.
exactly what we need to do.
sounds
Can
good.
I assume if there is a mid-coast water planning partnership in existence, can we just communicate with them and say, we're interested, count us in, or I don't mean count us in, but
Yeah.
we want to be part of the conversation.
Those are the answers that I
Yeah.
don't know tonight.
Yeah.
But I need a little bit of time to work with our staff to kind of figure out what would need to take place to.
I
But I
just-
think it's
I-
probably fair to say, from what I'm hearing, that we're concerned of the water issue, and it makes some sense. We just don't, at this point, know our resources, staff-wise, what we can do. But
I can say this, Mr. Mayor, that since our work meeting we held a month ago, this is actually one of the issues that we have that we're looking at, or at least I'm looking at, as far as our long-term planning goes. So it's something that we're already beginning to look at as we try to figure out where do we go for the long term.
I just have this question. It's something that I heard, and I don't know if it's accurate, but, so there's one thing of impounding the water. It's the other thing that bothers me, because I don't know how it would happen, is how you get the water from there to here because of, again, the topography and the piping are we thinking of creating a new way to convey the water?
Well,
No,
as I
and that's-
understand, the original plan had transmission as
Correct.
part of,
Yeah,
it
that
was
was part of the
both the
study.
impoundment and the transmission of to the different communities.
Yeah,
So that's there somewhere, maybe.
right.
not
It's there,
Very-
and again, that's what would probably be updated and to make sure.
I want to
so.
know about that.
Okay. Comments tonight?
You answered mine, too.
Announces, okay. Mr. Parsons?
On that or just in general?
Oh, no, in
Oh, in
general.
general?
This is your time to update
Yeah,
us.
let's make some waves, see what the appetite is. I'd like to look into banning sales of tobacco in town. For the simple fact that we were looking at plastic bags on the basis of pollution. One of the biggest toxic pollution things out there is cigarette butts. And all this information about how many people smoke in our county and are dying, don't know that this would help with that, but I don't see how it would hurt.
So, what would that look like as we look at what would you do to help us answer Councilor Parsons' question? I heard him ask, how would we look at?
Well, the first thing that I would do is get with our attorney and say, do we have the legal authority to make such a ban? Would the state allow us to do that? And I don't know the answer to that question.
That's question one.
That's obviously a preemption issue. We'd have to look into whether or not we've been preempted. We can look at it.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking. We wouldn't be the first municipality in this country. There are several, just don't know about any in our state currently.
Okay. Are you in agreement? You want to get a few?
Information is good.
Yeah, information.
Knowledge is power.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking
That's
for.
right. That's, sounds
Great.
good. Is that it?
That was it.
Really rockety boats.
I'm sure it'll show up in my email.
Deanna?
No, I'm
You all right?
fine.
I have a couple of things in addition. One, you may recall that we've been going through the performance reviews for our employees, the municipal judge, the city attorney, and the city manager. We've done 2 out of the 3. We haven't done the municipal judge. I sat down with him because I'm frustrated going back through previous ones. We haven't been able to come up with any real criteria to evaluate him. And I know we had given him, the council had given him last year the opportunity to come back with stuff, and he doesn't have any. And so I'm, and I guess I don't see a need or the effectiveness of a review, and he agrees. I think the key, as I looked at it and trying to judge for myself, is I would be relying on our city manager, city attorney, and chief of police to alert us, if things weren't working. The judge is under a contract with us, which in essence is a at-will contract, can go anytime with issues. And I would encourage all of us to visit with him and his courtroom, and kind of the process we're going with performance reviews is kind of live and immediate, to have those kind of discussions with him. But I'm having inabilities to come up with a criteria to judge him by, quite frankly. So, thoughts?
I'd just say that I visited with him, and I think that's one of the most important things that we can do. And whether we as a group evaluate him, like you say, we have nothing to evaluate him against, it is good to have that discussion with him and with us as a whole, because that's the only way that we manage that employee as a group. And we may learn something about what are there trends, are there other things that we should look at. So I think we could just have maybe a meeting with them, with all of us, and just kind of have an open discussion with them about how things are going and what things are changing. I'm not prepared to talk about that tonight, but there are some things that he would have to say, I'm sure, just in talking with him a couple months ago.
So,
That's my opinion.
so not really a performance review, but an update chat or
See, yeah.
Annual update.
an annual update. Okay. All right. It's worth your time,
Yeah.
counselors?
Almost definitely.
Okay. All right.
For the record, I've sat in a couple times, watched him, and I've had some conversations with him too. So.
Yeah. And we're going, again, I don't disagree. I think the key on all those reviews are immediate feedback helps, so. Okay. I'll get back to him and set something up. The other thing, there, just for information, because everybody's listening at 9:12. Wednesday, if you're interested, at the Episcopal Church in Lincoln City, there's a climate change talk at 6:30 p.m. Also on Wednesday at 9 a.m., there's Coffee with the Mayor at SALT and the Outlet Mall. And given the recognition we had earlier this evening, I can't help but remind people that there's a Community Police Academy. And if you've not made application, you ought to think about it. Councilor Parsons and I participated last year, and we were stellar performers. If I must say so myself, and I will. But I know I found it very interesting and informative, and especially now as I read some of the reports and activity, it's much more meaningful. So I encourage counselors as well as the public, they can make application directly to the police department. I will warn you that they do a background check, and again, we passed. So,
That's good.
all right, anything else for the good of the order?
Just one more thing, Mr. Mayor. Our Planning and Community Development Department is holding a sign ordinance workshop on Thursday, 4:30 to 6:30 at the Community College, I believe. So come out and let us know how you feel about our sign ordinance.
All right.
Okay, I have one other thing to say.
Okay.
Oh, one more thing. I just want to say that National Night Out, I don't know who was able to make it or not, was fabulous, and Mitch did a great job in the dunk tank.
As did Chief.
Oh, that's right, as Chief did. Oh, yes. And we had one officer go in completely with all his gear on. So it was just fun. It was a fun time. I think there was a lot of community members out there just visiting, and yeah, hopefully they do it again next year. And
Good impression from the community, yeah. All right, we stand adjourned. Thank you. There's a lot of presentations.